Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. It is a beautiful day in Salt Lake City. We are going to creep into the 60s and, dare I say it, even the 70s this week. I'm going to call it spring. I've fallen for a false spring or two in my day, but I don't think we're doing that this time. I think it's spring for real. Oh, and what a glorious feeling that will be. Snow still on the mountains, a picturesque and glorious day. We're going to try to keep you informed and entertained of all things going on in the sports world, especially as it pertains to our local teams. We will recap the ignominious exit of Utah women's basketball from the college basketball tournament. We will talk a little NFL draft. Ryan Fowler is going to join me in half an hour to help out in that regard. Scott Mitchell coming on to talk a little Utah spring football and everything going on with the NFL, free agency, the draft, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a lot of basketball to talk about today. Also checking in on the Puck Lake City playoff push. The standings for the NHL playoffs continue to be fluid. Right now, I almost said University of Utah. Right now, Utah outside looking in, and the St. Louis Blues making it very, very difficult for Calgary, for Vancouver, for the Utah Hockey Club to keep their hopes alive, because the Blues are playing some good hockey right now. They've won 6 in a row.
Yeah, we thought the old hockey club was chasing Vancouver and Calgary. Turns out everyone's chasing the Blues for that final spot.
Yeah, right now
they got hot.
You're chasing a red-hot Blues team. They've got 81 points. Calgary 77, Vancouver 76, Utah 75. So right now, despite a win over a solid Tampa team on the weekend, you are outside looking in. You are 6 points out of the final wild card spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we'll get to all of that on the show today. Of course, what has been dominating your interest, my interest, the sports public's interest here in the United States of America these past couple of days has been, of course, March Madness.
The madness.
The madness of March.
Everyone's mad. Everything's mad. However, whichever meaning you want to go with there.
Look, March Madness is going to turn into March Mad because right now we've got a situation that has developed this year, and I just put a poll question up at Real OC Sports. Look, I don't want to, on the home of the Utes, I don't necessarily want to start the show praising BYU basketball and where they're at. The reason I'm going to spend some time on that today is because I thought this BYU team had every chance to do what we're seeing them do. The way that they played the final 2 weeks of the regular season in the Big 12, how hot they got, even the debacle against Houston in the Big 12 tournament, I thought was well timed, because you don't just want to, like, I guess if you're Houston, if you're a 1 seed, you probably believe that you can go on like a 17, 18-game win streak to close your season and win a national championship. I thought that BYU at some point, probably in the Big 12 tournament, needed to kind of lay an egg, and they did. And it revitalized them, re-energized them, refocused them, whatever you want to say about that. And BYU's playing really good basketball again. Now they flirted with disaster down the stretch against Wisconsin.
Absolutely they did. And Tanji for Wisconsin, 37 points, almost brought him all the way back. That was incredible. Richie Saunders, 25. I mean, at the start of this season, OC, Richie Saunders was looked at as a role player who could hit the outside shot for you when you needed him to.
He's your best player.
He's their absolute best player. It was supposed to be Yegor Demin, probably the best player this year, and he's been solid. You'd like to see him better as a better three-point shooter. You'd like to see him turn the ball over less, but he's been solid to really good. It's been the Richie Saunders show this year, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, Richie Saunders has been a revelation for BYU. You kind of thought you were going to get some what you're getting from Kebaketa. Mawit Mag has been awesome. He was awesome.
Yeah, really good veteran leader for them. Transfer out of Michigan State. Yeah.
And then, of course, what you've seen all year long from Yegor Demmin, who is still a projected lottery pick, by the way.
It depends on the mock you look at. I saw a mock he's in the 20s. I saw another one he's like 17.
What you see from him though, what you've seen from him has actually, from the BYU perspective, worked out okay for the Cougars because it has forced KYU, it has forced Kevin Young to show you what he is as a coach.
Yeah.
And make the hard decision and not just be like, oh, yeah, well, we love the kid. We made all these promises to the kid. We know why he's here, to be a one-and-done player. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to ride this horse, even if the horse is playing a little sickly right now. And instead, he made adjustments. He took the ball out of Demmin's hands in a lot of important scenarios.
Yeah, pulled him out of the game even in some really important games, which was surprising.
And so you ended up getting, I guess, an example of how good your coach is, even though you want the player to have been playing better. But then look what Demmin did down the stretch against Wisconsin. And I know that he would rather have had a more consistent season, but look what he did down the stretch against Wisconsin, a guy that has struggled so mightily from three-point range especially, shot one from the logo, the half-court logo.
That's true.
And when
he's shooting with confidence now. He had a couple of threes against VCU too that people didn't expect. VCU certainly didn't. They gave him plenty of room to shoot it.
And he was 3 of 10 against Wisconsin. He was 2 of 6 from 3 against Wisconsin, but the timeliness and the confidence to take those shots in a really, really crucial competitive time in the game, good for Yegor Demmin, good for BYU. They are in the Sweet 16. They are they're part of the problem I'm about to bring up. But BYU, from a Utah perspective, if the Cougs can do this, if this is the model that can work for BYU, there's no reason why Utah can't do it also. I'm not saying, we expect A.J. DeBonsa to show up next year. That's a next year thing. He's going to show up next year. He's going to cash $5 million with the NIL checks, and he's going to be one of the best players in the country, I think.
Yeah.
All right? That's what I think is going to happen with A.J. DeBonsa. BYU thought Yegor Demmin was going to be the best guard in the country or one of the best guards in the country this year. Okay? They paid a bunch of money for him to show up, and he wasn't one of the best guards in the country. He's not a top 10 guard in the country. He's not a top 20 guard in the country right now. Is he a valuable member of that particular team? Yes, absolutely he is. He still requires a lot of attention. He's still got some physical traits that are hard to replicate. He still makes some timely shots like we're talking about.
The raw talent is still awesome for him. He just needs to put together more consistency.
He dishes the ball incredibly well still when he's not turning it over, right? He's a valuable member of that BYU squad. It's not unrealistic to think for Utah basketball that with increased support from your millionaire and billionaire alumni who are very excited about Alex Jensen being on the Hill, it's not outside the realm of possibility that you can go into Europe, that you can go find not exactly a Yegor Demmin, in fact, hopefully a better version of Yegor Demmin, but somebody who everybody else wants, and you've got to pay a decent amount of money to get him to come here, and you're going to have to sell on the idea that, hey, me and several members of my staff, which is still being filled out, by the way, have deep NBA connections, have an ability to develop talent, either as a big man, as a guard, as whatever. We are going to put you in a situation to succeed, whether you want to be a one-and-done player, whether you want to be a guy who stays here, gets a degree, and then moves on. We've got something for you, and you're going to enjoy the process. You're going to be in a beautiful facility while it happens. And, of course, you're going to get some NIL opportunities. You're going to get a little bit of money while that happens as well. And because you're coming here, we're going to be a tournament team. That's going to be the toughest selling point of all those things, because you can check every other box at Utah. picturesque campus, great social opportunities, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you know what I'm talking about. NIL money is coming in to the program. The NBA connections on the staff, if Kevin Young can sell that, so can I. Alex Jensen, I can tell you all these great players that I have coached, including the best defender in the world in the last 10 years, and at least one guy who is a universal pick for top 5 player, and right now is killing it with the Lakers of all people. So you can check all these boxes. You can give them all these selling points, the same ones that BYU was able to put out there for AJ DeBonsa, who's coming next year, for Yegor Demon, for Cannon Catchings, for all these individuals, and you can say, with you here, we'll also make it to the tournament. Now, BYU could say that last year, even though they had the early exit, right? And they've had more success on that front, at least being able to put the feather in the cap. Yes, we made it to the tournament. It's been a decade for Utah, right? So that's one that you're still going to have a hard time selling. But if BYU can do this with this roster, whose best player, quote-unquote best player, is not the guy people thought it was supposed to be. Richie Saunders is not athletically different, skillfully different, recruiting profile different than someone that Utah can get.
People Utah have been getting.
Correct.
Lately. Yeah.
Now, BYU deserves credit, and Richie deserves credit for figuring out what he is.
Yeah, for the development, Mark Pope before Kevin Young and Kevin Young's staff this year, developing him into a legitimate college star on the national scene, absolutely. That we have not seen a Utah coaching staff do that with a Richie Saunders type player coming out of high school in a long time. So that's the big difference.
But it's not like you're looking at a dude who this is not a Zion Williamson, a Cooper Flagg. This is not an Obi Toppin. This is not some guy where you're just like, well, we're not gonna get that individual at Utah.
I mean, Jerem Jordan, we love him on Red and Blue. He said that he's definitely an NBA player. I'm not sold on that with Richie Saunders.
Well,
but
look, he's definitely going to get his opportunity.
He's going to get his opportunity, but I'll have to see if he can continue his development enough to be a really good NBA role player. He's not going to be an NBA star. So that just to add to
compare Richie Saunders athletically to the guy that is parked next to you at the stoplight right now, he's special. When you compare him to guys that are in the NBA right now, he is not special. All right? There's a sliding scale for all of this stuff. And I'm not saying that to insult BYU, or I'm not saying that to insult Richie Saunders. I'm saying that because it gives me optimism for the short term and the long term with Utah basketball. Because if you wanted Alex Jensen to come in and say the model we are going to follow right now, immediately off the top, what we have to do is we have to be Houston. We have to be Kentucky. We have to be Duke. It's not going to be uber realistic in the short term. If you look at teams that are on your level, recruiting-wise, on your level NIL-wise, or within striking distance of you NIL-wise, to your chagrin or not, begrudgingly or not, you can say, all right, what is BYU doing? Can we match the BYU level? And I know there's not this obvious low-hanging billionaire fruit of Ryan Smith. There's not that at the University of Utah necessarily. But I was at the Alex Jensen press conference just like you were, James. The introductory presser, if we turned our heads to our left, and if any of you who were in attendance at the Huntsman Center for that intro presser looked down and to your left on the floor, there were some heavy hitters sitting there. There were some big-time donors sitting there with smiles on their faces, excited about the future of Utah basketball. It doesn't mean there's a blank check. It doesn't mean that the next AJ DeBonsa is going to get a $5 million NIL deal to come to the University of Utah, but it doesn't give me any kind of pause to say, well, look, if you can find a Richie Saunders type player, if you can find a Kebaketa and keep him in the building because Alex Jensen can now, I don't want to cast any aspersions on Craig Smith here, but if Alex Jensen can say to Keba, like, look, man, just be a little bit more patient and realize what I have done with this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and especially with Rudy. Look what I've done with these guys.
Yeah, big men especially should be intrigued at the idea of playing for Alex Jensen.
Just stay the course with me, right?
Just like Keba was intrigued at continuing to play for Chris Burgess, and one of the main reasons why he went to BYU is because he followed Chris there, and one of the same thing for why he came to Utah initially. He wanted to be coached by Chris Burgess. The same reasons, and you can say even more so. Hey, yeah, Chris Burgess, he's coached and recruited a lot of great big men. He was a really good big man in his day. I took Rudy Gobert from the 27th pick, a guy who looked like he couldn't move at all effectively on the court, turned him into a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year and Hall of Famer. That's a one-upper if you're Alex Jensen. All due respect to our guy Burge.
And look, it's going to take some convincing, and it's going to take some prove it with winning games in the non-conference early next year.
And certainly with recruiting.
With recruiting, absolutely. But BYU's a Sweet 16 team right now, not because of Yegor Demon, who they paid to come here. Not because of A.J. DeBonsa, who is not yet in the building. Because they made a really excellent hire in Kevin Young, and his staff adopted a model that made sense to all the players. They got some important transfer portal guys, including, unfortunately, Keba Keita, unfortunately from the Utah perspective, right?
And they got guys to stay like Foose. Foose could have left. A lot of guys in his position leave.
And they found
Richie is another guy, too.
They found this gem, and they said, you know what? Richie Saunders is actually playing some really good basketball right now. Let's see what we can get out of him. And then when they saw what they were going to get out of him, they were not shy about saying, you know what? Yeah, that's our dude. That's the guy with the ball in his hand when it's necessary. And it hasn't been all that necessary, at least yet in the tournament, right? They've outplayed everybody. And yes, they let Wisconsin battle back, and Tanji had the ball in his hands 8 feet away from the basket with plenty of time to get himself a better look and a better shot, and he stopped his feet and he picked up his dribble, and it was not the best play he could have made. He wanted a foul.
He was trapped at that time. All he could do was try to draw a foul because he was too good a defense to get any better shot off. Yeah.
And that just stinks, right, for Wisconsin. But for BYU, you're a Sweet 16 team right now. And if you're Utah, begrudgingly, you should be watching this and you should be saying, all right, well, who are our comps in the athletic competitive world, in the Big 12 Conference? Who can we realistically model ourselves after? And you don't have to do anything else like BYU, but you should look at that roster and you should say, look, they've spent some money, certainly. But
we're going to need to do that. Yeah.
We're going to do that. That's already part of the plan. But what they did, most importantly, is they got a guy who was already on the roster and was kind of an unsung hero, and they said, you know what? That's our thing. That's our guy. I don't know if you're going to be able to retain Keanu Dawes, okay? I don't know if Lawson Lovering, I think, put his name into the transfer portal over the weekend.
That happened over the weekend. We already talked about Jake Wallin. That we discussed that during the show last week. His name's in the portal.
In the portal, although he has stated his intention to finish out the college basketball crown tournament, which of course is next Monday, a week from today.
Oh, can you even wait for it, OC?
Have we told
the crown?
Have we told people what's going on?
No. Go ahead. I was waiting. I was giving you the floor to be able to do that.
So Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes, did not anticipate that the college basketball crown, the invitation would be extended or accepted, and his daughter is, I think, doing a study abroad program, and Bill's going to to visit her, to pick her up or to drop her off. I don't know what it is. But it's an important family event for Bill.
Yeah.
And so Bill's not going to be calling the college basketball crown, so they're pulling the lefty in from the bullpen, dude. I get to call the first round action for the college basketball crown, Utah versus Butler.
Let's go.
Me and Sean Moody, the Walk-Shawns.
The Walk-Shawns on the call.
An all walk-on Sean broadcast. I'm very much looking forward to it. I cannot wait. I'm slightly nervous about it because basketball, I haven't done a lot of basketball, but I cannot wait for this opportunity. Very grateful to have it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Week from today, let's go. Right here on ESPN 790.
Way to go,
FM.
OC. I'm happy for you. I've been happy for you since they told us it was last week that they told us this would be the thing. I'm excited for you, and I think you'll do a great job. You've told me you've been studying up because basketball is not like you just said. You haven't called a lot of basketball games, but you'll have had 2 weeks, right, in between.
Yeah,
and so you'll be. I know you'll be ready to go. You'll kill it. So
it's gonna be fun.
It'll be at most one game for you calling, right? It'll just be the first game because you've got PFL duties after that.
That's right.
On the other game days. So I think Tyson Ewing will be in line to do the rest of the tournament if in fact Utah's able to get that win over Butler on Monday.
Yes. So, looking forward to that. And if there's a takeaway for Utah basketball, who's of course idle during March Madness and looking at BYU's Sweet 16 success, you just have to kind of bite the admiration bullet and say, okay, there are models here that we can follow that are not going to break our bank, that are not going to destroy the culture, the model, the sort of ethos of Utah basketball, and that I think could fit in very nicely to what Alex Jensen and company not only want to do, but actually can functionally do.
Also relevant to AJ and the future of the Runnin' Utes program, the Mavericks are now in 11th place. The Suns have leapfrogged them in the play-in for the play-in tournament. Now they're virtually tied, so the Mavs could get themselves back in the play-in tournament. But if they don't, that means Alex is going to start his head coaching duties sooner rather than later.
Yes.
So that's also good news. We're rooting for the Jazz to tank, we're rooting for the T-Wolves to lose some games. You should probably also be looking at the Mavs record if you're a Utah basketball fan, because the sooner you get Alex Jensen completely focused on this job and filling out the rest of his staff. Rafael Chilius, by the way, newest member of that staff, another guy with an NBA background. As soon as he's able to lead Coach Chilius and have them fill out the rest of that staff and hit the ground running recruiting, obviously the better.
I need Keeler McJunkin and Rafael Chilius to do a podcast together.
Junk and Chill.
Junk and Chill.
Chill and Junk. Chill and Junk.
Chill Junk. The Chill Junk podcast. Just great names. The all-name team is right here in Salt Lake City.
I reached out to Tony Jones to come on the show today. I did not get a response yet. Tony, if you're listening, hit us up back, because he hit me back here, because not only is he great on what's going on with the Jazz and the NBA, of course, his main gig, and he's also paying real close to March Madness, top of mind thing right now, of course. But Chill was a high school teammate of his, so he's got some insight on the newest assistant coach to run Utes too. We'll see if we can get him on this week, if not today.
877-353-0700. Always love to hear from you on the Sean O'Connell Show. The other thing I wanted to address, and we'll maybe spend a little, well, not maybe, we'll definitely spend a little bit more time on it, but just something, a little seed to plant. I think most of you probably realize this already, but we have to consider the possibility that Cinderella is dead. That princess story we love in March Madness is now a bygone thing, a thing of the past. That there is no more glass slipper, that Prince Charming ain't coming for anybody because of the transfer portal and because of NIL. This is a real possibility. I'm not just get off my lawn yelling at the clouds old man here. This might be a fluke, maybe, but the timing of it being a fluke would be very interesting, don't you think? When we are now firmly into the transfer portal NIL era, everyone has kind of figured out the system for it. And it just so happens that once everybody embraced it, everybody got comfortable with it, everybody figured out how to make things work, and the NCAA kind of got out of the way on a lot of this stuff, that now, for the first time ever, there are only 4 conferences represented in the Sweet 16. And those 4 conferences being represented also happen to be what we consider the power conferences. Power 4 conferences, of course, we consider basketball to have 5 power conferences still, but only 4 of those are represented. The SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12 Conference still have horses in the race. There is no Missouri Valley. There is no Conference USA. There is no small school mom and pop. I've never heard of them before in the Sweet 16. 7 was the previous low. 7 conferences represented in the Sweet 16 was the previous low number. This year you've got 4. Is Cinderella dead? Go vote on the Twitter poll at RealOC Sports. You can always weigh in at 877-353-0700 on our Dish Pros text line. We're going to talk a lot of basketball today. As I mentioned, we're going to jump into a little NFL draft outlook with Ryan Fowler. That's a month from today. The NFL draft starts, by the way. You can always find us at ESPN700sports.com. You can listen on our ESPN 700 app. You should already have downloaded that, but if you haven't, go ahead and do so. Tell your smart speakers to play ESPN. You can find the on-demand section on the ESPN 700 app and search The Sean O'Connell Show wherever you get your great podcasts. That's how you listen to us. We appreciate when you do. Our opening segment is always brought to you by Top Local Roofing. It is that beautiful sunshine now that's going to allow you to walk outside and to look up onto your roof. I did this literally today as I was pulling out of my driveway. I was like, what is that? That is a loose shingle. That is a triangular piece of shingle is just chilling in the middle of the expanse of my roof, just laying there. I don't know where it blew from. I don't know where it blew off of. I don't know if it's my shingle or a neighbor's shingle, but I'm looking at that thing and I'm like, that does not belong there. That is an upside down shingle, out of place, out of alignment. Top Local Roofing. If you've got something like that happening, if you've got a serious roofing problem, if you've got new construction, 801-839-4501. Tell Justin Cunningham that OC sent you and that you need help on the roof to protect everything under the roof. 801-839-4501. Switching gears a little bit, Ryan Fowler, NFL draft analyst, is going to join us next. We'll talk about how set this draft is, how set the draft order is, as teams have addressed some of their needs in free agency, but there's still a lot of questions. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, just getting started on a Monday. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Ryan Fowler, NFL draft college football analyst at the Draft Network. Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Appreciate you having me on, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for giving us some time. So we enjoy the pre-draft process here in Salt Lake City. It is not going to be a banner year for the flagship, the University of Utah. They do have a couple of pro prospects that were invited to the combine and that have showed out at the pro day as well. My question for you is the way that the scouts, the way that the teams sort of divide their attention and their commitment and their eagerness to attend these things. Pro days now organized, at least for the Big 12, into this big event at the Star in Frisco, Texas. And obviously Indianapolis and the Combine are still an event on the calendar for sure. But if you're a guy who doesn't get invited to the Combine and you go down and you put up some huge numbers in Frisco, like Utah wide receiver Damian Alford, who had no production this year, was able to do that. Put up some big numbers at 6'4", 230 pounds. Is that enough to capture the attention of a pro team?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, you look at every single year, there's guys that sometimes they're projected top 100 guys. Maybe they're guys that work into the back end of day three, and you say, why are they not at the Combine? And that's really the conversation every year. But for a guy specifically, I'm glad you mentioned Damian because teams bet on traits every single year. If you have the height, you have the weight, you have the size, you have the length, you have the speed, teams want to bet on traits. And when they're paralleling some players, specifically when you work back into that 6th round, 7th round, even the priority UDFA type of bucket for guys that are going across the country and trying to sign these players post-draft, you're going to take the bigger player if you're a scout, and you're going to take a guy that you can say, hey, this is a guy that has some traits for us, and he's going to come in and potentially make a roster. We're not going to expect him to be a top 3 or 4 wide receiver in our offense, but someone that has some traits. And I think when you look at this thing, the ways in which the Combine has changed over the years, right? There's no longer hey, you're the blue chip of the class. You're going to go to Indy. You're going to do everything. That's just not the way things are nowadays. So these pro days, these individual workouts, these 30 visits, they're so big nowadays for a lot of these teams, for a lot of these players that do not get invited to Indy, or more so, they aren't invited to Shrine. They aren't invited to the Senior Bowl or even some of the lower level bowl games. So the process is it's long, it's exhausting, but it is really big for some of these smaller schools, smaller, lesser known prospects that may have some traits, but the production maybe hasn't been there for them in their collegiate career.
I appreciate you indulging me on the traits discussion for another second here because there's another guy who wore a Utah football uniform for just one season, and he caught 4 passes for 4 touchdowns. He's a basketball guy, Caleb Lohner, who was a Baylor basketball player, a BYU basketball player, and actually after the football season was over, he played for Utah football, which means that he was at practices and shoot-arounds and things like that when everyone else was getting ready for their pro days, everyone else was getting ready for their combine workouts. He was certainly in the gym, but not necessarily doing the specific stuff, and yet he put up some impressive numbers. Are NFL teams excited about a project, not only because of his traits, but you got to teach this guy how to play football still?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm really glad you mentioned Caleb. This isn't Dalton Kincaid, right? This isn't even Brant Kesey, who obviously teams are so high on despite the injuries and the long amount of time that he spent in college. He's going to make an NFL roster, in my opinion. But for Caleb, he's also a guy that made a play on special teams, right? Heard he blocked field goal against Utah State, whatever it was this year. He's someone that's done a lot of different things. And when you got basketball size at 6'7", 250, I'm not going to sit here and compare him to Jimmy Graham or any of these other larger type of tight ends that have that basketball background in day and age. But this is a guy that teams in that UDFA bucket that have experience. And also, I'll say this, too, from just talking with scouts across the league, there is a type of football player and a type of young man that you're always going to get out of Kyle Whittingham's program, a guy that is well-coached, a guy that's going to come in that understands what he's doing in between the shoulders as far as the mental makeup, and a guy that's going to grind. Whether you're a Dalton Kincaid or one of these guys like Clark Phillips coming out the last few years where you're top 50, 60, 70 guys, a guy like Damian or a guy like Caleb, late on day 3, UDFA bucket, those are the types of players that ultimately can make a 53 and other teams look around saying, and if they develop into something, say, how did this guy get here and we didn't notice them ourselves?
Junior Tafuna did a great job at the combine. He did some drilling at this pro day. I think he made himself the most money at the Senior Bowl practices. He was mentioned a lot. He was popping in those things, really jumping out. Not only, I think more importantly in the practices than in the game itself. And I'm curious your thoughts on a guy who was a little bit plagued by injury, and obviously, Utah's produced a bunch of really good D tackles, but they didn't have great years in his prime years at the University of Utah. Your thoughts on Junior Tafuna and where he might end up in terms of draft order? Because I think it's not going to be early.
No, it will not be early. Fully expect Junior to come off from that 5th to 7th round type of bucket right now. I've been very impressed with Junior Tafuna. You mentioned the Senior Bowl. In those situations, it's set up in isolation for those defenders and the big boys getting after it up front, and when they're cracking, for those defenders to win. But there's a little things in his game where also when he was in individual drills, team drills, run game stuff, or even in the game to where he's just a player that you understand what you're going to get right away. And this class, Sean, where it's so polarizing, where there's so many differentiation of opinions, where what can you get from a lot of different guys? You build Super Bowl rosters on day 3. Those are guys you have to draft, and I didn't just come in and make a 53 and wear a jersey and steal a game check. You need guys to come in and potentially play 30 to 40% of the snaps. For Junior's perspective, be a rotational defensive lineman. For someone like him to where he's stout in the ground game, I love his ability to win with leverage and just his strength at the point of contact. I just absolutely love that in his game. This is a guy that's not going to be a vertical push type of player where you're going to get 5 to 7 sacks from him, at 1 tech, 3 tech. But you know what you're going to get in the ground game, which is going to pave the snaps for him early on in his career. So I've been impressed with Junior Tafuna. Again, 5th to 7th round bucket, and I wouldn't be surprised to see someone later on in day 3 in this class that drastically outplays his draft slot.
Ryan Fowler, my guest here, talking NFL draft as the pre-draft process continues for Utah football players. And you mentioned, I would be remiss if I didn't at least dig a little bit deeper here. Brant Kuithe is, one of those guys that we will always in Salt Lake City wonder what if he could have stayed all the way healthy. What would have happened with his college career if Cam Rising hadn't been injured and Brant Kuithe hadn't been injured? But as you said, NFL teams are still intrigued by him. He's a bit of a tweener size-wise, and obviously there is that injury history. What do you see happening for Brant Kuithe at the next level?
Yeah, I think he's going to have to come in right away, and bust his tail and impress everything he does from the points of rookie minicamp to OTAs and into training camp. He's going to have to be someone that consistently stands out. I wouldn't say it's a long shot for him to make a roster right now, because I do think at his ceiling, I think he could be probably a low-end tight end 2 or a tight end 3 for an offense like a Kansas City, to where beyond Travis Kelce, right, they've used Noah Gray and Blake Bell over the years in these 3 tight end sets that they want to rotate in. So I think that's his type of role. But, a guy that has a lot of college experience, right, freshman all the way back in 2018, there's a lot of production at times when he is healthy, as you mentioned, and I do wish we could have played, right, that hypothetical and say what would he be if he was healthy, because I like the traits when he is healthy. He's got really good hands. He blocks his tail off. He's got good athleticism up the seam. He can put his hand in the dirt as that throwback type of wide tight end. But again, with all that said, the injuries are a concern. The age is a concern as far as performance ceiling perspective for scouts. And he is going to be a guy that's going to battle his tail off to try to even make, a back end of a practice squad right now for me with Brant. But again, a player that I think still has some juice left in the tank. It's just being able to stay healthy. And of course, as we know, the best ability is availability. And that really comes down to a guy like Brant Kuithe.
All right, expanding the conversation a little bit to include other teams in the Big 12. I appreciate your indulgence on the Utah questions there for a second. But I think the first Big 12 player taken off the board is likely to be the former Heisman Trophy winner. You're not supposed to call them former Heisman Trophy winners, actually, right? The most recent Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter.
Right.
Is he a wide receiver, a DB in the league? Is he going to get to play both? I imagine not full-time starter both ways, but what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, the Travis Hunter conversation is really fun. For me, if I'm sitting there and I'm a GM, he is personally my number 1 player on my board. Abdul Carter is a close second, but I've personally never seen a player with the all-pro ceiling at both receiver and corner. I don't think we really have ever seen that coming into the NFL. Now, There are some concerns with him at corner. You turn on the Stanford tape from last year where he's going to be attacked in the ground game. I don't think he ever develops into a guy that plays full-time on both sides. However, I think it would be completely juvenile of a GM to look at this thing and say, we're not going to at least try him if we play him full-time at corner to play some snaps at receiver or vice versa. I think he's just such a dynamic playmaker with instincts at both positions that are just out of this world. He is a 50-50 ball extraordinaire that really turns into a 90-10 when he goes up in the air. I know there's some guys out there that will compare him to some lower-level receivers in football. I even see some Justin Jefferson in his game as a long, wiry type of player, and I actually see a lot of Josh Norman in his tape at corner. I think he's just a dynamic, electric type of football player that boosts whatever you want to do with him at corner or receiver, and he's going to get paid either way, and I think he's going to be a future All-Pro. And is that at both positions? I don't think that ever happens, but right now you draft him, and wherever you need him the most, you're going to slot him in right away and just be an immediate boost on either side of the line of scrimmage for him.
What's going to happen with his great friend and teammate Shedeur Sanders come draft time?
Yeah, look, I have a second-round grade on Shedeur Sanders for me personally. I'm not there all the way with him, being a top 15 pick. Will he get there? Probably. I do think he's still going to be a top 10 pick likely. Either he's a Titan, a Brown, a New York Giant, and that type of bucket. There's a lot of tethering with Ashton Genty to the Raiders right now at 6, even though they obviously have some questions there under center. But I do think Shedeur is going to be a top 10 guy. I think he's one of the toughest players in the class, bottom line, standing under center, and that Colorado offensive line where, as you know, Sean, it was a mess a lot during his time in Colorado. But the weapons on the outside, with Travis and Will Shepard, LaJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn, blah, 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 the names go on and on and on. I do think he's going to be a top 10 player, but for me, I'm just not really there right now with the traits that you need at the position to be a franchise type of guy to where you elevate everybody around you. I don't see the pocket maneuverability. The clock, the internal clock is extremely extended. You don't have the juice of even a Drake May from last year's class to get outside the pocket and consistently create. And just the arm strength, that ball consistently dives at people's feet when you get to 15, 20 yards. You really got to pump it into someone's chest and get downhill as a thrower. So, again, still think he's going to be a top 15 pick. I just think that the cons a little bit outweigh the pros for me right now, and that's why I have him in the second-round bucket.
Is being Deion's son a con or a pro for most NFL teams?
I think it's a pro for them, and I think it's a pro for me. I want a guy coming under center, and I want a guy that plays with confidence. I want a guy that plays with not arrogance. I think arrogance and confidence gets misconstrued this time of year. He's someone that has a great amount of confidence. And to come in and lead a locker room of not 19 to 22-year-olds, you're leading grown men. Some are 30, 35, nearly 40 years old. How can you show yourself in that locker room, not only with your talk, right, with the flash, with the wrist, with the watches and the jewelry and stuff? Can you play under center and lead an NFL offense and really an organization as a face every single Sunday for the next 5 to 7 years? So I like the confidence in his game. I think it's a swagger that every team needs under center. So I think it's a pro for pro teams and for me as well.
I want to make sure I ask this question the right way, but it makes sense in my head. The thought makes sense in my head. We've got a bunch of guys right now. You could put Brant Kuithe in this bucket. Cam Rising, the quarterback for the University of Utah, who was plagued by so many injuries, and I don't know if he's ever going to get a shot in the NFL after all that, but, from a skills standpoint, I don't see why he can't be Gardner Minshew. But guys like that made a lot of money in college now, these last few years. And so the calculus, I think, for some of these individuals is going to be a little bit different in how they approach trying out in the NFL, being an undrafted free agent in the NFL. Obviously, if you get drafted, those rules apply to you. Is the NIL space and the earnings that guys have in college going to change that undrafted free agent thing for NFL teams in any meaningful way, in your opinion?
Absolutely. We've seen the last few years, even with guys, I think back to last year with Olu Fashanu. Right now, that guy's a first-round pick, but he goes back to Penn State after could have declared and been a first-rounder the year prior. He's making basically first-round type of money at Penn State with NIL money. I think of a guy that was with Miami within the middle that his name is escaping me right now, but he ended up with the Jets, and he was just somebody that was considered to be a top 50 pick. And, he went into school, and as the year progressed, the grades continued to drop. He still declared. He came out. But the money wasn't there for him as far as coming into the NFL, what he was getting, at Miami. So that the NIL space really it's an unbelievable thing. There's no regulations really yet across all sports with this thing, and I think it's changed dramatically as far as the concentration of talent across the country. But I think if you're a player and even you're maybe let's say a fifth-year senior, and maybe you have some sixth-round grades from teams, and maybe let's just say you have potentially another year of eligibility, and you're already making more money than you think, you're going to stay another year of college, and let's just say be a tight end 1, a tight end 2 for a team, and go on from there. So I think it's changed a lot, bottom line, Sean, as far as the top of the draft, the bottom of the draft, and even how players look at themselves now from hearing from scouts to where it used to be, I have a draftable grade. I'm coming out after this year if I stay healthy. Everything, all things considered. But if I'm not, there's going to be some some questions there that I need to answer as far as do I need to stay here, make more money, and then go on from there, unless my opportunity is still there as well.
For many years, we've been following Utah and Utah State and BYU players who are usually a little bit older entering the draft because of Mormon missions and things like that. And for many years, it was considered like, I don't know, man, you're 24, you're 25, strike while the iron's hot, get out there, do your thing. And then you had the COVID situation, which extended eligibility for everybody. And, of course, NIL opportunities like you're discussing, making it more appealing to stay in school. Are NFL teams right now a little bit more forgiving of that 25-year-old prospect?
Yeah, and that's another great question, and a way in which teams are trying to figure themselves out as far as laying their boards down in this class. And I think a guy that pops to mind immediately, considering that age, is not just Brant Keithy that we mentioned earlier, but even a guy like Tyler Shuck, the quarterback from Louisville that initially started his career out at Oregon as a very highly touted recruit, and the guy is. He's just an older prospect, but at the end of the day, you're mature, you're physically and mentally mature in that aspect. You've seen everything at the college level. Teams value that. Now, you're going to draft a 25, 26-year-old in the first round as far as performance ceiling. Usually you're not going to see that, and I don't see that happening here in the next few years. But the age thing, I think, has gone away from scouts' minds to say, hey, we could get this player in here right now. Maybe it's at a position to where their ceiling is 2 to 3 years. Maybe that's a older running back like a Taj Brooks or one of these more experienced players like a Cam Scadaboo as well. If we want that mature physical type of player, instead of looking at it and saying, here's a junior, maybe he missed a year. We've really only seen 1 year of college production, but we really like the traits here in our offense. We're going to draft him on potential. But that word, Sean, is scary, that word potential, because that ultimately can get coaches fired, especially if you're a junior and you're declaring and you're a guy that only has 1 year experience and you haven't really shown yourself at the college level. So it's a really good back and forth question for teams to ask themselves. But I think we're swaying a little bit more further from not drafting a player specifically because their age and they're a little bit more mature than the other guys in the class.
All right, who goes number 1 before I let you go, Ryan?
I think right now, the ways in which the weeks continue to progress, I think it's Cam Ward to the Titans. I initially thought it was going to be Will Levis for another year, but if I had to guess right now, I do think it's going to be Cam Ward to the Titans.
That is Ryan Fowler, college football and draft analyst over at the Draft Network. Ryan, appreciate your time. Let's have you on again before actual draft day, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Sean.
Great stuff from Ryan Fowler. Some good things about the Utah guys and intriguing things traits-wise. We talked about Caleb Lohner. Damian Alford. Did we talk? Damian Alford, we didn't talk about that, right? That was just me having conversations on Twitter. The guy ran blazing speed at 6'4", 230 pounds. Turned in big-time numbers. Damian Alford ran a 4.46. He jumped 32 inches, which is just okay. 10.6 broad jump. Nothing to write home about on the bench press with those long arms. You don't care about that for a wide receiver. 4.46 in the short shuttle. I mean, Damian Alford, why did you have no production at the University of Utah? Traits like that, I'm a jerk about traits like that not translating to you being a good football player. He had production at Syracuse. He did not have production at the University of Utah. You hate to see it. Anyway, big thanks to Ryan Fowler for joining us on the show. We'll take another quick one. A very, very brief hot lunch is coming your way. We had one of the ultimate upsets in college sports history over the weekend, and it was not in March Madness, but we have to discuss it. You're listening to Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Scott Mitchell is going to join us at the top hour number 2. We'll give it about 5-6 minutes before we get to Scott. Talk spring football, upcoming NFL draft, NFL free agency, et cetera, et cetera. That's coming. Huge upset over the weekend. And I know people are like, oh, really? Which Cinderella team defied your expectations? This was actually rife with Big 12 connections as well. James, I know you're probably not watching a lot of NCAA wrestling tournament, national championships happening.
Any means zero.
That's fine.
So
That's
yeah,
fine.
but I did hear about this. This made big news.
This is huge. Okay, so Oklahoma State has long had a great wrestling program, long produced big-time wrestlers, and many of whom, by the way, have found a ton of success in my world of mixed martial arts as well. Randy Couture was an Oklahoma State Cowboy. He was a wrestler back in the day there. Johnny Hendricks. You've got Daniel Cormier, a bunch of guys. Okay? Well, add Wyatt Hendrickson to the list of folk heroes from Oklahoma State wrestling. You may have heard the name Gable Stevenson. I'm sure you have not heard the name Wyatt Hendrickson until today. Gable Stevenson is an Olympic champion, heavyweight gold medalist. He also happened to be a University of Minnesota wrestler. He also happened to be a guy that thought he was going to be done with his collegiate wrestling career and dabbled in the NFL. He got signed by the Buffalo Bills to just see if he could play football. His first football game, his first real football game, James Peterson, was an NFL preseason game. And you know what? He was playing nose tackle, and he did pretty darn well. He's very light on his feet. He's obviously incredibly strong, great leverage. But you're not making an NFL roster if you don't know how to play football for real. And Gable Stevenson had to he tried out doing the WWE thing. I don't think he's necessarily gifted on the mic. He decides he's going to go back. He's going to wrestle in the NCAAs. He's going back to the University of Minnesota. He's going to try to become a 3-time national champion. He does not give up a takedown all year long. Gable Stevenson, the Olympic gold medalist, is on his way to another championship until he runs up against Wyatt Hendrickson, who in the final seconds of the national championship match scores a takedown, rides out the final seconds, and wins 5-4. The only takedown that Gable Stevenson gave up all year was in the national championship match to this. He's in the Air Force. Wyatt Hendrickson is in the Air Force. He's like a dude who's he's exactly what you think an Oklahoma State Cowboy heavyweight wrestler is. And he's going up against the biggest star in the collegiate wrestling world. When you achieve Olympic gold medal status, you become a different animal in that wrestling world. People worship you. They revere you. And you know what? Wyatt Hendrickson, because he's an active member of the Air Force right now, he draped the American flag around his shoulders while he walked out onto the mat, which is something that is usually reserved only for Olympians. It's a thing in wrestling that you're only supposed to carry the flag.
It's the unwritten rule.
Yeah.
You're
only supposed to do it if you're an Olympian. And he walked out onto the national championship mat with the flag around his shoulders. And Gable was mad about it.
He felt like he was showing him up?
Yeah, he talked trash about it. He's like, What are you doing? And they jawed back and forth a little bit. Wyatt ends up winning this championship.
I feel like
if you're in the military, you could do it.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm not in the wrestling world. As I said, I did not watch this this match or any of the NCAA matches. But yeah, I'm with you. The active military should be an exception to that unwritten rule. Active military or veteran, if you're not in the military currently, but you served before and you happen to be in NCAA ranks wrestling, it can be Olympians and veterans / active military that can wear the flag. I mean, Olympians representing the country, yeah, but these guys are fighting for the country or have fought for the country. So, yeah, I think that should be okay.
Just an unbelievable moment. He's down 4-2. Time is running out. He shoots the double and initially gets stuffed. He has to turn the corner. He has to run the pipe. He just gritted this thing out.
Basically at the buzzer.
And then Gable, who, by the way, that's how he won his Olympic championship. He scored with 3 seconds left on the clock and won the gold.
So he pulled a Gable on Gable.
Gable got gabled, and Hendrickson pulls off the biggest upset in NCAA wrestling history, honestly, or the biggest one since Dan Gable, who Gable Stevenson was named after. Dan Gable lost a national championship match. He would have been a 3-time national champion. He would have been an undefeated through his entire collegiate career, and this is like in the 70s. It does not happen, James Peterson. This is Rulon Gardner winning the gold medal. This dude, we got to get him on the show. We got to find a way to get Wyatt Hendrickson on the show.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I've had an opportunity to meet Gable. I've had an opportunity to interview him a couple of times. He's an interesting guy. He's got all these incredible opportunities laid out in front of him. NFL teams are still calling him. He's got contracts from every MMA organization in the world as soon as he wants to sign one. The WWE will give him another shot. But the day the national championship goes to Oklahoma State's Wyatt Hendrickson, and I'm fired up about it for Wyatt. Anyway, that's I had to get that in the hot lunch. I appreciate you indulging me. If you have not seen it, go watch the highlight. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Twitter. You can find it anywhere you want. I don't know if Doug from Farmer and Chemist is as fired up about this as I am, but I hope he is because, we love a good underdog. Doug, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show once again. How are you?
Man, I wasn't that excited, but I am now. I'm fired up about it.
All right. I love it. Look, Gable Stevenson, he's probably having a hard time sleeping after something like that. He gives up the takedown. He loses the national championship. He can't lay down and find peace at night unless he calls Farmer and Chemist. You got some gummies that can help out with that.
That's absolutely right. After a day like that, he probably needed a yummy gummy with CBN. So CBD plus CBN plus a little bit of THC and for a restful night's sleep. And the best part about it is you take that about 30 or 40 minutes later, you feel the drowsiness coming on, you lay down, you get a great night's sleep, you wake up, and you're not feeling drugged at all. Not hungover, not sleepy. You just pop right up and ready to go another day. It's the best.
What if I need something that's going to help out with some aches, some pains, a little bit of muscle soreness? Maybe my joints are a little bit inflamed, but I can't pop in a gummy and go to sleep. I need something that's going to allow me to function throughout the day and hopefully just take some of the edge off that pain. Do you have something for that, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there are two things that I would recommend. First, we have gummies with 0 THC. That would be a whole body anti-inflammatory. They're called Gem Gems, and they're amazing. They taste great and give you pain relief. And then for those spots where you have achy joints or muscles and you just want to treat a specific area, our Problem Salved. It's a beautiful little ointment you just rub onto that spot that's giving you the trouble, and the pain goes away in about 5 or 10 minutes. It really, I hate to say it, but it works like magic. It's that good.
How do our listeners find you, Doug, down on historic Main Street in Midvale?
Absolutely. We're at 7719 South Main Street in Midvale. And you can also see us online at farmerandchemist.com. And if you use the promo code online or drop into the store and mention ESPN 700, then you get 20% off your entire order.
I'm going to put it in order. I'm going to send some to Gable Stevenson so he can get some sleep. I'm also going to send some to Wyatt Hendrickson just so he feels great after that national championship. Either way, you need some Farmer and Chemist in your life. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Farmerandchemist.com. Tell them OC sent you. Make sure you take advantage of that discount exclusively for our ESPN 700 listeners. Doug and company down there. It really is a fantastic place. If you're looking to dabble, if you're looking to learn about the CBN, the CBD world, you want to go to a place like Farmer and Chemist. Pharmacist directed. They know exactly what goes into every single product. High calorie ingredients, very, very carefully mixed, very, very carefully measured. It's not a guessing game if you go to Farmer and Chemist, farmerandchemist.com as well. Hour 2 begins next with Scott Mitchell. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Levitt operates out of the shotgun. Scatterboot left. He'll take the pass, a snap, and backpedal. He looks, he's hit as he throws, and the ball is intercepted by Utah. Who came up with it? One of the big guys up front came up with it, looks like.
Junior Tafuna.
It's Junior Tafuna. Fano applied the pressure, and Tafuna comes up with the interception, and Utah's forced the early turnover. They'll get it back.
That was a Junior Tafuna interception against Arizona State. Sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley on those calls alongside our next guest, Scott Mitchell, also host of the Down and Dirty, which precedes my show here on ESPN 700. Scott, welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's a Monday. It's good. It's the weather's warm, and I'm talking to you. Doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, beautiful day in Salt Lake City. All right, let's get right into it. Spring football underway. Give me your most interesting or your fondest, maybe not fondest, maybe your least fond spring football memory from your days at the U.
I actually was someone who really liked spring football practice. I remember my freshman year, and so I had my true freshman year, and then I went, so we went through the season, and then we went into spring football, and it was a little bit slower pace than the regular season, and I really felt like I learned a lot, like I was grasping the concepts and what we were doing more internally, almost like I just felt like every day, like, oh, the light bulb's kind of clicking on here. And so I really appreciated that out of spring football. I think as a quarterback, you're probably one of the position groups that gets the most out of spring football, the live reps and seeing people move around and having to make decisions throwing the football. It's not easy to create that in a classroom watching film. And so I valued those times and really got a lot out of it.
So as we look at and we start wondering about what Utah football is going to look like in this 2025 season, of course, those questions start their answers in spring and probably actually started their answers in the winter conditioning period preceding spring football. But we will have some limited access to watch parts of practice. Obviously, we'll get to talk to coaches, media availability happening tomorrow afternoon, et cetera. What's the first thing on Scott Mitchell's mind about what this team can be next season?
Unfortunately, we're back at that same thing. How's quarterback going to play? How is this team going to do offensively? Listening to Morgan Scalley a few months ago, do you doubt us now? Like every year we put together a good defense. Like we've kind of dialed this in. We've kind of figured out what pieces fit and who those pieces are. And we go out and find those players and plug them into that system. So for me, I'm not doubting Morgan Scalley. I'm not doubting this defense. I'm not doubting there's a lot of good pieces in that defense that are there right now that I think are going to be even better than they were a year ago. Smith Snowden will be fun to watch. Lander Barton, where does his maturity level go? Getting, Lamani Demoody back, Teo Johnson, there's going to be some guys that are really going to step forward. There needs to be a pass rushing end, and who's that person. But I'm confident in the defense. It's the offense, and if the offense, they don't have to be brilliant. They don't have to be a juggernaut. They just have to be better. They have to be maybe 14 points a game better, 7 to 14. Maybe it's 10. I'll split the difference. If the offense is 10 points better, Utah is competing for a conference championship, and that's really where it has to be. So I'm excited to see where Devin Dampier ends up, and to see that guy, because you never know. You never know. I mean, Baylor had the MAC player of the year, and he turned out not to be a great player, but the guy they kind of had lost hope in turned out to be a guy that turned the ship around a little bit at Baylor a year ago. And you have a similar situation. You have a guy coming in with a lot of expectation, and I'm not saying he isn't, I'm just saying we don't know for sure until we line up and play. And you've got Isaac Wilson, who, is kind of going to be fighting through some things. So that's going to be interesting to see where Jason Beck's offense is and these new additions and where all that takes place. That to me obviously is the big thing. And I don't know if we'll totally be able to tell from spring, but it'll be fun to watch and kind of see where these guys are.
So I'm going to put you in charge of the quarterback reps that are happening in spring, knowing that you've got to install this new offense, knowing that your running back room is completely new. You're probably in a really good situation offensive line-wise because not only are those guys talented, but they've played a lot of football. You got, a bunch of starters back. And even though they have to learn a new system, I mean, that's a group that can help each other do that. So now I'm putting Scott Mitchell in charge of balancing out the quarterback reps. How do you do it? Because you've got, like you mentioned, you've got Devin Dampier. Everyone's got high hopes for him. Isaac Wilson is back in the picture. Nate Johnson is back in the picture. You've got the Oklahoma transfer, this Brendan Zurbrugg kid that everyone seems to be very excited about because he was at one point a highly rated recruit for the University of Oklahoma. But there's limited reps to go around. You've got, a sparing amount of practices in spring and then in fall camp, even fewer practices because you've got to start doing real install and real game plan stuff after a couple of weeks there. So I'm putting you in charge of handing out these quarterback reps. How are you going to do it? You doing it by percentage? You doing it by give me the hot hand today? Tell me how it works, Scott.
No, well, first of all, you're not going to do it by hot hand. You may do it by injury, and that either elevates someone or knocks someone down because they can't participate. And those reps are just invaluable. I mean, they're just like gold. They're so precious. The luxury you do have is you have a quarterback that knows the system. So it's not like he should get more reps. I mean, you could argue, well, let's give him more reps so he can show everyone else how to really run this offense. It's kind of a nice caveat. It's a bonus to have a quarterback that understands where he's not just starting from ground zero like everyone else, and he'll help everyone around him, including the other quarterbacks. I think the reps are relatively. I think they're relatively balanced. As much as they possibly can be. Where you can steal reps and get extra reps is when you go and you do scrimmages, because guys go for drives and series, and those that's where you can really find some extra reps. There is this VR technology where guys are getting reps through this visual technology, and I believe Utah has that capability, and that's becoming a thing. If your quarterbacks are paying attention in practice, and a good coach will make sure his quarterbacks are around him, so they're watching those reps even though they're not in, and they're getting the mental reps, and may laugh at that or may think it doesn't mean anything. It does. Like having your mind and any time you can see something and have to make a decision whether you're there or not, it just helps you to understand things better. And so right now there's a little bit of you got to give everyone enough reps to kind of find out what you have and what you don't have. And so you certainly at this point don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So it's probably evenly split in practice right now. To me, it's about the hierarchy, though. It's like who gets the first team reps and who gets the second team reps. And because I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of going in and saying we have a depth chart and this is our number one guy. I'm not a fan of, well, this is a competition. Well, it's always a competition. You're always competing. I want to see how a guy competes when he is number one. Does he take charge of? Does he lead the team? Is he a guy that everyone gains confidence in when he's that guy? And I want to see the guy that's number two or number three not be happy about being number two or number three. So that's where the competition comes in for me. It's when you've been set in a position, a depth chart, and how do you handle being in that depth chart? And quite frankly, I want my 2, 3, and 4 guy to be absolutely ticked off and want to, fight the world because of where they are. And I want my number one guy to go, I'm the baddest dude on the planet. And so it's more about not so many reps, but kind of where you are in the pecking order. And you still may get the same reps, but what are you doing with those reps, and what's your mindset with the reps?
I'm really glad you brought up that, you like when there's a depth chart. Most fans want clarity in that regard. I think people on the team want clarity in that regard. And one thing that I don't recall any time recently, at least, is a pro team going out there and just being like, well, we have no idea who the starter is going to be. It's an open competition, because you kind of know. I mean, the salaries on the roster will tell you, draft positions and things like that will tell you. And obviously college sports is it's looking more and more like the pro ranks and every year. Is that now the case at a place like Utah, at a place like BYU, at a place like Texas, where we can look at it and we can say, well, look, I mean, your projected starter is the guy that you paid the $1 million to, or the $500,000 to in NIL. So the coaches don't have to give you that lip service. They don't have to do the lip service for the team, for the guys in the locker room either, because we know that he who makes the almighty dollars is likely the starter.
Yeah, it's a fine line, because the other fear is if we have a depth chart, the guy's going to bolt if he's not number one, right? And which is lame, but that's how a lot of these kids are today. The other side of it is the coaches know, like you can go to practice, you can go to meetings, and you can go, clearly we know who number one is, number two, and number three, and the players will know that. Like there's just a process of self-scouting and adjustment where these players go, yeah, he's better. He's clearly the guy. And so you have an idea. But to talk about the NFL model, I think it's not only like this is our guy because we paid the money for this guy, but I think the way the teams practice and the opportunities to practice, I wouldn't be surprised, and teams actually should lobby for this, to have more time with their guys. In the NFL, you'll hear every team go, our season's made or broken off of our OTAs, the time we get to spend with these players, and having your roster almost half of it turn over every year, and to have the limited number of spring practice and practices in the fall, it's almost impossible to get a system that can be dynamic enough to really, win football games and be effective. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the NCAA say, look, okay, because we have NIL, we have the transfer portal, and we have all this stuff and these new rosters every year, we need to lax the time that these coaches can spend with these players, because it's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the coach. It's not fair to the players. If you're going to let them move around, then you got to let them adjust. I know every time a new coach was hired in the NFL, you get more mini camps. You get more time, because it's a new coach and a new system, and I wouldn't be surprised. They should do it. Quite frankly, I think it would be a good move. You just need that extra time, no matter what.
Scott Mitchell, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking Utah spring football. Utah fans have gotten really, really gun shy as of late on quarterbacks running the ball for obvious reasons. When you get a quarterback outside of the pocket, he can get hit. He can fall into a cooler. Anything can happen. But you need to allow Devin Dampier to run. I mean, that's what made him so dynamic at a place like New Mexico. That's what this offense asks of the quarterback. So how does that change the relationship Kyle Whittingham's going to have with the offense, with the 3 yards in a cloud of dust type situation that Utah football sometimes falls back into, when your quarterback is your biggest running threat, or one of your top 2 running threats? How's that going to work for Utah football?
So a couple of things. Mouse Davis, who invented the run and shoot, basically exposed the quarterback. He got everyone out in routes. So quarterbacks were going to take unnecessary shots. And he basically said, you're my number one guy, and we're going to go with you until you get injured. then you'll be the number one guy pointing to the second string guy. We're going to go with you until you get injured. And then he pointed to the third string quarterback and said, "You're our number one guy until you get injured." The point is, you're all going to get injured. So if you're the first quarterback at Utah, and you're Devin Dampier, is there a potential that you could get hurt? Probably, because when you're a running quarterback, you're just exposed to more shots and more plays where the potential of injury is there. Now, there are quarterbacks that run, and there are running backs, or there are quarterbacks who are running quarterbacks. And I think Devin Dampier is more of a running quarterback, where running backs understand and they know how to protect themselves. They know how to run and not get injured. And that's how running quarterbacks are. And that's Devin Dampier is a quarterback who runs and protects himself when he runs. Cam Rising is a quarterback that ran, and he ran into trouble. He like looked for trouble, and he put himself in some really precarious situations, and I thought he overexposed himself. So I'm less likely to think that Devin Dampier is going to get injured running, but still he's going to run, and there is that potential. And if I'm number two, it's like I know every week I need to be ready to play because that potential is there. Devin Dampier, I think, is the guy you want to have run, though, because the upside of his game and how diverse it is, running is a very effective tool for him at quarterback, and it's a real problem for defenses when your quarterback is very skilled at running the football.
All right, we have not yet touched on the wide receiving core. It seems like every year in Utah football, and we're going to have the same conversation in the fall. You say, all right, who's the playmakers on the outside? And they went to the transfer portal for that. I think they're going to still go to the transfer portal for it, probably post-spring. But how many touchdowns does it take? How many big-time catches does it take? How many reps does it take for you as a quarterback with a guy before you're able to say, like, oh, yeah, I got something here? Because I guess the reason I'm asking is, again, it's limited practice time in spring, and you've got a bunch of dudes that we just don't know. Are you going to be able to find out through spring ball?
I don't know if you totally find out, but I think you'll start to get players to emerge. I mean, this offense is designed to give you those big plays, and so getting. You know, if you have the ability to run the football, if the quarterback has the ability to run the football, then play action becomes a big part of what you do, and it also becomes very effective. And usually, play action produces big chunk plays, and it also typically is one or two guys in a route when you do play action, and so the reads are pretty simple. It doesn't take a lot of sophistication. To get a feel for a guy. It's like he's either open or he's not. And so you don't need a lot of time to figure that out. And so the offense will kind of breed opportunities for big plays and for quarterbacks and wide receivers to kind of get on the right page, without maybe an overly intricate, route combination that requires a lot of reading, a lot of adjusting, and I think it's one of the things that Coach Whittingham liked about this is that learning this offense and being efficient and effective in it, it's kind of plug and play, and it's easier to for guys to get on the same page and be effective with. It was one of the big priorities I know for Coach Whittingham, changing course with the offense to simplify it and just make it very user friendly.
Do you know who is in the lead right now in our $1 Million Bracket Challenge as far as the ESPN 700 crew, Scott Mitchell?
Based upon the tone of that question, I'm going to say it's me.
It's you. Scott Mitchell right now in first place among the ESPN 700 crew. 14 of your Sweet 16 teams are still alive, Scott.
Yeah, and I second guessed myself on BYU, Wisconsin, and I believe I picked Wisconsin, but yeah, I'm a savant, Sean. That's all I can tell you. I know these things. I don't know how it works. I just know.
The only two teams that Scott did not pick advancing to the Sweet 16 who were able to do so, he did pick Wisconsin over BYU, and he, like many, thought that St. John's, that the Johnnies would be in this situation as well. But the other 14 teams, Scott Mitchell picked them correctly so far in this tournament. It's a decent bracket, Scott.
I think I have Houston winning. I think it's Houston or Florida, and I think it's Houston. But that's my team to win it all is Houston.
Well, you will hear Scott Mitchell on the show at least once a week here on ESPN 700. You'll hear him on his own show, Down and Dirty, from 10 to 11 a.m., and we appreciate him giving us the time. Thanks, Scott.
Always a pleasure, Sean. Have a great day. Thank you.
Scott Mitchell. James, where are you at with your bracket? James Peterson. Where's the James Peterson bracket? How's that looking?
I don't like your tone because I think you know.
It's just a question.
I think you know that I'm near the bottom of our group. Okay. Thank you for reminding me that I had an awful weekend.
I can't wait
in March Madness. OC. Thank you for that.
Well, I've always known that I knew a lot more about basketball than Gordy Chiesa. Right?
Yeah, Gordy and I are. Is he a point ahead of me? Maybe.
No, Gordy's suffered, man. Jeff Schwartz is way back there.
Oh yeah, we definitely need to make fun of.
We got to make fun
Jeff
of poor
for
Jeff. Right now it goes Scott Mitchell, then Kayvon, then Porter Larson, then me. And then it's Alonzo, Spence, James. So you're in sixth.
Out of, I think there's 9 on there.
Tied with Sarah Todd.
And by the way, we should shout out our listeners, the leaders of our listeners group, the ones that actually can win the million if their bracket's still perfect. But
no one has a perfect bracket still. No one in America has a perfect bracket.
Oh, that's right. The last one I saw, the name of the bracket was Road to Perfection. The last perfect bracket, then it, of course, fell apart, I think, yesterday.
Yeah, because they do, right? Right now, for bragging rights, and hopefully we could throw together some, like, gift cards or something if you're the top of our bracket challenge, our $1 million bracket challenge on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Right now, Kurt Wolgamuth and Viliami Wolfgram are neck and neck.
And they're both beating us. They're beating the ESPN 700 crew. So
there's
great job to them.
Yeah, there's actually 6 people that are beating everyone. 6 people that are beating even Scott Mitchell.
It just goes, even Scott Mitchell, who's a savant, as he calls himself a savant. Yeah, so they're beating the savant Scott Mitchell.
I think actually calling yourself a savant disqualifies you from being a savant. I think that's one of the characteristics of an idiot genius of a savant is like you have to not know.
Yeah, you have to be unaware.
You have to be unaware of your own genius.
Yeah.
So I think Scott disqualified himself when he became self-aware.
He's still leading our ESPN 700 staff, ESPN 700 crew group. So good job by him. We'll see what happens in Sweet 16. I picked St. John's to go to the title game, so I probably will not be winning our group.
You're not gonna have a lot of great outcomes moving forward.
I still have the other 3 Final Four teams and the national champion in play.
Okay,
but
right.
Arizona is one of the other Final Four teams, and Duke looks incredible. Did you see the way they just destroyed VJ Edgecombe and Baylor?
I've got Duke losing to BYU. You think that's going to go well for me?
If BYU hits their threes, they can beat anybody. So if it's a good 3-point shooting day for BYU, that might turn out well for you. But I don't know. Duke is superior talent-wise to just about anyone in the country, though.
All right, Scott Mitchell, that conversation with Scott Mitchell brought to you in part by our friends over at Mountainland Supply. Go to mountainlandsupply.com or check out any of their physical locations for your home improvement projects. Some more numbers from the Big 12 Pro Day. We didn't get to all of these. Wideouts and DBs were able to run and able to participate over the weekend. So some good news for a couple of Utes. Also, some really, really bad news for one that I thought we would be having a different conversation about. We'll get to that next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Beautiful day outside. Hopefully you're streaming us while you walk your dog or go for a jog or whatever. Maybe there's enough snow in the mountains. Maybe you got the day off or you're taking a half day and you're skiing, listening on the ESPN 700 app. However you can hear us, we're happy to be here with you. Some updates from the Big 12 Pro Day that happened over the weekend. Again, guys, I don't know what it is. We got to get Doug Elisaya and company on. Utah football players can jump, all right? So Zamaya Vaughn turned in the fourth best vertical jump from Big 12 Pro Day. 39.5-inch vertical jump. Wow. Mekhi Bernard, 38.5-inch vertical jump. And we already talked about how the defensive lineman performed so well. Caleb Lohner, a 37-inch vertical jump. Money Parks, 36.5-inch. Like 6 of the top 20 dudes at any position, vertical jump-wise, University of Utah. And then when you go position by position, the big dudes, right? Miki Sugataraga had a huge vertical. Van Fillinger had a big vertical. He also had a great bench press. So some really strong performances from Utes looking to impress pro scouts. And we know it's not all about those measurables. It's not all about turning in a decent number on some of these things. Damian Alford, again, he ran so incredibly well. His 40 time at 6'5", 230-something pounds is going to get him an opportunity probably as an undrafted free agent because he had virtually no production. He threw an interception for Utah last year, right? And there are going to be coaches who scratch their head about that, and there are going to be people who wonder what the heck happened. And look, his agent's going to have to do a good job of trying to point the blame at the University of Utah and say, well, look at his Syracuse numbers instead. But here's one. I don't like doing this. I don't know why it happened this way. I have an idea as to why it happened this way. You know who had maybe the worst Big 12 Pro Day of any player at any position, maybe from any school, James Peterson?
No, I don't.
Dorian Singer.
Oh.
Dorian had just a really, really awful experience. I don't know if he's injured. I don't know if he's ill. Something tells me he might not have been preparing for any of this because he thought he was going to get some kind of waiver, some kind of flyer to come back and play at the University of Utah. But I really cannot stand seeing the numbers next to the name of Dorian Singer, who I thought was a victim of circumstance at the University of Utah. Great player at the University of Arizona. Didn't necessarily make the right decision in transferring to USC. Kind of got lost there. And then, of course, a huge get in the transfer portal for the University of Utah. And unfortunately, the quarterback situation couldn't live up to what he was capable of doing. And still, he blocked his butt off on the edges. He ran his routes hard. In games where it was clear Utah was not going to win, it appeared he was still competing very hard. I heard only good things from people behind the scenes about his attitude, about who he is as a human being, good character, all that kind of stuff. So I had high hopes, first of all, that we would see more of him at the University of Utah. Those hopes have all but evaporated. And then on top of that, I was like, okay, well, we'll turn the page and hopefully we see Dorian Singer being productive at the next level. And while that's certainly a strong possibility, from a athletic performance at the combine or at the pro day workout standpoint, it could not have gone more disastrously. That's a word, right? Disastrous? Yeah.
Disastrously, yeah.
It could have been worse.
Yeah, it's
for Dorian Singer.
It really is too bad because he obviously had a really good career leading into his time at Utah. The time at Arizona, much better than his time at USC. But still a really productive career. He had a really productive season considering that he had 4 different quarterbacks thrown to him, and the guy that he thought was gonna be thrown to him all year. Was supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Cam Rising ends up getting hurt and missing most of the season once again. And considering all of that, he was actually really, really productive for Utah this past year. Would have been way more productive had Cam Rising been healthy, obviously, all year long. But yeah, this is just a tough way to end his college career and to kind of try out for the NFL.
Again, I hope this can be explained because of injury. This can be explained because of illness. Dorian had the worst broad jump of any wideout. He was tied for third worst vertical. He didn't run the 40, which of course is pretty important for the speedsters or the folks that are hoping to impress people with their speed. He was among the worst performers on the short shuttle. The 3-cone drill, he didn't show out well. The bench press, he didn't do anything special. There's got to be an explanation here. He's a good football player, and I know that there are some people who are good football players despite not being athletic. That's not how you characterize Dorian Singer. You don't look at the way that he runs, the way that he plays, and just be like, oh, well, that guy's actually kind of slow. He just finds a way to wiggle around, you know? And look, it doesn't preclude you from being in the NFL or making an NFL roster when you don't make a huge splash at a pro day or at a combine. Like Puka Nacua ended up having the greatest rookie wide receiver season ever, and he didn't do anything remarkable at the combine. But I wanted more from Dorian Singer. I wanted more for Dorian Singer. So my hope is, knock on wood, that this is something that's a health recovery situation. He can get back to it. So
or maybe the NCAA last minute gives him a waiver to come back. Even better.
That'd be awesome.
So he can play with his brother and hopefully be even more reason for optimism for this new offense for the Utes.
Also, you know who had kind of like a pretty bad combine as a wide receiver as well? Or not a combine, pro day? Darius Lassiter from BYU.
Oh, really? Yeah, he was obviously high expectations going into this draft process.
Not
Great
awesome
season.
Not awesome measurables for him, although 6'2", 200 pounds. He had 4 TDs this year on 45 catches, but just okay. Just kind of ran slower than people thought he would. 32-inch vertical jump as a wide receiver is like not good for a normal human being.
Yeah, it's good for any average Joe. I'd kill to have a 32-inch vertical myself, but
for a guy who wants to be an NFL wideout, it just
that's
it doesn't
subpar.
resonate. But so unfortunately, you have that outlier among the Utah performers that Dorian Singer just didn't really do all that well. But Money Parks looked good. Damian Alford looked good. Mekhi Bernard, who of course is a dude who you have to root for at this point for everything that he sacrificed for the University of Utah, ended up being a bell cow back when people didn't think that he was capable of that. There was a lot of doubt around him. There was a lot of questioning. The dude just played hard, man, and he's going to go down as one of my favorite Utes of all time because of the way that he handled the adversity of these last 2 seasons, especially going all the way back to when he was sort of like pressed into duties as a defensive back for the Rose Bowl. He just has a really good attitude about things. And to see Mekhi Bernard perform well at a pro day after not getting the combine invite, I think it was good for my heart and hopefully of Utah fans. Hopefully good for them to see that. He ended up with a pretty decent little day in terms of his athletic performance testing. 4.58 in the 40, 38.5-inch vertical, 10.6 in the broad jump. 14 reps on the bench press is fine. It's nothing like overly fantastic. He actually overperformed in the short shuttle time relative to his 40 time, showing that he's got good change of direction and acceleration, which of course is something that you need to prove to people you can do as a running back. So
what was do you remember offhand the metric that analytically actually proves more running back success at the next level?
Yes.
How do you do in that one? Remind me what that was and how do you do?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because age and weight.
That's right.
Were the big.
It wasn't a drill. That's why I couldn't think of it. It was
Yes.
It was age and weight. Yeah.
Unfortunately, those are not in Mekhi Bernard's favor.
Yeah, he's old. He's old for a rookie running back. He'll be a little older.
And he weighed in under 200 pounds at this pro day. And I think part of the reason he did that, if you look at his short shuttle time, I think that's probably why he came in light.
He had a better
because he could show off his quickness.
Yeah,
his quick change of direction there.
That makes sense.
At 225, 240 pounds, like some of these running backs, that's probably going to be harder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He weighed in at 199. But look, he had a 1,000-yard season. Mekhi Bernard's someone's gonna be like, all right, what can you do for us? He's gonna be an undrafted free agent, and someone's gonna be like, can you survive what we're asking you to do in the NFL? Do you want to run down on kickoff? Are you going to be able to block on special teams? Like, he can make a roster doing that kind of stuff. And then, because no one's going to, like, immediately put the ball in your hand if you're Mekhi Bernard at the NFL level, you have to find a way to make a roster in those ways. And then something's going to happen. Somebody's going to get injured. You're going to be playing late in the fourth quarter with a big lead or getting blown out. They're going to put you in, and they're just going to be like, you know what? Let's see if this guy – let's put him on a wheel route and see what he does. And that's where Mekhi Bernard can start to impress people.
Yeah, and I hypothesized last week on the show that maybe one of the reasons he cut some weight going into this pro day was the fact that he's getting some feedback that he's probably more realistically a returner or one of those running backs that they use in the passing game a lot more, and you'd obviously could be more effective in that if you're not so heavy. So there could be opportunities for him that way too at a smaller weight. So yeah, either way, he's certainly a guy, as you said before you started talking about how well he did. He's certainly a guy with the right attitude and the right work ethic to make whatever he can work at the next level. He just needs the opportunity, and hopefully he gets that.
So he ended up with the second best 40 time among running backs, the third best vertical among running backs, the second best broad jump among running backs, the fourth best bench press among running backs, and the third best short shuttle time among running backs. So Mekhi Bernard among the Big 12 running backs, if you went as a pro scout looking for prospects, if you went down to the Star in Frisco, Texas, looking for someone who could fill out your depth as a running back from the Big 12, you were like, hey, that guy performed pretty well on all fronts. So good for Mekhi Bernard. We'll end on that higher note. You'd love to see that from Mekhi. Before we take a break, I know I keep telling you to do this. For some reason, you might not be listening to me. Maybe you don't trust me. You don't have to trust me. You do have to trust Top Local Roofing. If you need fixes on the gutters, if the heat tape came blowing off the house, if that ice caused a bunch of dams that then built themselves up and pushed the moisture back up under the shingles and those things started to pop up, if there's just nails coming down into your lawn and you don't know what's going on with the roof, don't go up there yourself to check it out. Call Top Local Roofing, 801-839-4501. Justin Cunningham will come out. He'll send the crew out. They will make sure your roof is dialed in. They will make sure that as the spring showers are coming, as more snow comes down and melts immediately, quickly on your roof, that moisture does not end up in your house, ruining your couch, warping your floors, making you have to sand and paint and replace drywall. Top Local Roofing is for you to trust everything. They trust them. You trust them with everything under your roof. All right? The roof is the most important part of your house. You want to protect the electronics. You want to protect the family photos. You want to protect grandma's heirloom furniture. You better have the roof dialed in. Top Local Roofing, 801-839-4501. Tell them OC sent you. Lots more to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. That's right. Time to take a look at if the Utah Jazz are bad or are they bad enough? Sean O'Connell Show continues here on a Monday. James Peterson has our tank race update. What do you have for us, James?
Yeah, they're not quite bad enough. Not quite as bad as they could be anyway, OC. Maybe they're bad enough, technically, because they are in that bottom three, but they could be a little worse, in my opinion, OC. I'll tell you all about it here. Let's just recap what happened over the weekend, though. The Jazz lose twice. They did their job. They lost to the Celtics, a game which you were able to attend, OC. It was fun having you there.
The Celtics were happy to see me there as well,
yes.
Unfortunately.
And our guy JP Chunga, who now works for the Jazz, gave us the line of the night. Danny Ainge, bring in a championship team to Utah.
Well done, Danny.
In the form of the Celtics, of course. Yes, well done, JP as well for giving us that little gem. Danny Ainge has brought a championship team every year since he's been here because if they play in if it's a Western Conference team, they play a couple of times a year here in Salt Lake City. If it's an Eastern Conference team, they at least play once, like the Celtics. So there you go. Mission almost accomplished for the Jazz front office. Anyway, they lose Friday. The Celtics, they lost yesterday, an early afternoon game at the Delta Center, OC. I was able to attend. I ended up getting some tickets on the cheap. Went with my lovely wife. See them lose by 30 points to the Cavs.
Okay. All right.
It was a 1:30 game. It's like, hey, why don't we just go to the Jazz game here?
Hey, those little matinee games, man, they're awesome.
Still a great time. Donovan Mitchell's return, his second return to Utah, and they destroyed him. So there you go. They lose to the defending champs and a team that might be the eventual champs in back-to-back games over the weekend. The Wizards also lost twice, unfortunately. Friday to the Magic, Saturday to the Knicks. And then the Pelicans, they lost twice. Friday to the T-Wolves, Sunday to the Pistons. Hornets lost both times this weekend as well. Friday to the Thunder, Sunday to the Heat. And the T-Wolves beat the Pelicans on Friday. They had the rest of the weekend off. So no ground made up in either the primary tank or the secondary tank, but they maintained technically a tie with the Wizards, but they're ahead by one game in the loss column because of that head-to-head win over Washington on Wednesday. So Wizards percentage points ahead of the Jazz in the tank race standings at 15-55. Jazz 16-56. Hornets in third at 18-53, 2.5 games back. Pelicans still in fourth at 19-53, 3 games back. So still some good separation there. And the Jazz, of course, still in that top 3. A reminder to everyone, yes, 14% odds at the number 1 pick if you're anywhere in the bottom 3 records in the league. So you don't have to be the worst record to get the best lottery odds. That being said, as low as you can get on the standings is the better because you can only drop 4 spots out of your projected pick spot. So right now the Jazz could drop to 6 because they're in the 2 spot, 1 to 5. So if you move up to 1, you stay in the top 5. That'll help you out a little bit if you don't get the number 1 pick. Where the T-Wolves, they are in 7th place now, a half game ahead of the Clippers, who are in 8th place, a half game behind the 6th place Warriors. So they're still in the play-in range here. Probably going to make the playoffs. They may even get a first-round upset. OC. That's how well they're playing. And then some March Madness draft scouting, just updating who's still in the field. If you're wanting to scout some people, Duke's got 3 projected lottery picks. They've got Cooper Flagg, of course. They've got Knipple, of course. Those are 2 we've told you about. And then the center, Common Malawach, a South Sudan center. He's rising up the draft boards lately. A guy that they're comparing to another young center out of Duke, Mark Williams, who was part of that failed Lakers Hornets trade. So rebounder, shot blocker type. He's also in right now projected to be lottery. So Duke is a team you want to watch if you're looking to scout players for the Jazz if they don't get the number 1 pick. Maryland, Derek Queen, he's the guy who hit the buzzer beater for Maryland OC.
Mm-hmm.
He's now projected 5th or 6th in the draft. A big forward, and they call it the Crab 5 at Maryland.
I like that.
And Jalen Rose was on the call, was one of the guys on the call for that game, and he shouted out the Crab 5. So a member of the Fab 5 shouting out the star of the Crab 5 was incredible symmetry on that buzzer beater. And then Michigan State has a familiar name, Jace Richardson, the son, of course, of Jason Richardson. He's a guy that is looked to be a lottery pick. So we're down to 5 projected lottery picks left in March Madness, OC.
And probably much more importantly, from a Jazz fan perspective, is like the guys you're actually hoping to pick. It's Cooper Flagg, and then a bunch of dudes who are not playing.
Yeah.
And then all these other guys are like maybe your secondary tank picks.
Yeah, these guys might, if they slide a little bit, they might be in range for your T-Wolves pick. Yeah, later in the first round. But yeah, so we're down to 5 that are still playing. The rest either didn't make the tournament, like the Rutgers guys, Harper and Ace Bailey, or they've been eliminated, like VJ Edgecombe, for example. So there you go. That's your tank race update. Jazz, by the way, back in action tomorrow night.
Well done, James. All right. Check your bracket in our $1 Million Bracket Challenge by going to ESPN700sports.com.
You're probably beating me.
You're probably beating James. You're probably not beating Scott Mitchell. You might be beating me. ESPN 791 FM's $1 Million Bracket Challenge brought to you by Motorsportsland, Jersey Mike's, the Intermountain Sportsman's Expo, Intermountain Bobcat, Ken Garff Nissan in Salt Lake City. We are very grateful to all of our wonderful sponsors for giving us the $1 Million Bracket Challenge. No one's going to win the $1 million, but we'll scrape together some kind of fun prize package. James will, I don't know, give you like a $5 gift card to Smith's or something.
Hey, maybe I just give you $5. There you go.
Just $5.
Promise you spend it at Smith's.
But it has to be a nickels only. Actually, that's not a bad time. $5 worth of nickels, Nickelcade. Let's go.
That's a good point.
All right. Right now, women's NCAA tournament happening. Number 1 Texas demolishing number 8 Illinois at the moment, 40-21 currently in the third quarter with about 7 minutes left to play in the third.
The women's tournament, as you know, OC, is the opposite of the men's tournament, where the men's tournament's the first weekend is usually the most exciting. The women's, especially lately, the later you go, the more exciting it gets, because this year you've got Juju Watkins, and in past years obviously it was Caitlin Clark. You could watch these great players, see if they can actually lead their teams to Final Four or national championships. Yeah. Unfortunately, the mid majors on the women's game are not. It's a whole other level. It's not like the men's game where any given game, a mid-major might be able to upset a team from a major conference. We're not at that level with the women's game yet.
Well, is what James Peterson just said still true of the men's game? Can any mid-major knock off a blue blood? Well, in 2025, it doesn't look that way. We'll talk about what that means for the tournament, what that means for NCAA basketball moving forward. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Gillespie from the out of bounds to the freshman Queen, who's driving, floats it. Oh! Maryland on the right side of a buzzer beater with life into the Sweet 16.
Derek Queen, one of the moments of the tournament with that buzzer beater. Second round win over Colorado State. That sound courtesy of TNT Sports. Lisa Byington on the call. And look, that moment is great. You love to see a buzzer beater. That's what college basketball is supposed to look like. I actually enjoy even the defensive stop at the end of the BYU game because it came down to that final possession, all right? Is it more dramatic when a shot goes in? Sure. But coming down to the final possession, that's great. The downside of Colorado State going out, one of the downsides, I suppose, we do not have a Cinderella surviving in the Sweet 16. There's nobody left that fits the bill of Cinderella. And that's not new. We've seen this happen in tournaments in the past where you just don't really have that one player, that one team that you get behind and say like, oh, look at these upstarts from the middle of nowhere. They might actually make something happen. We also know that very rarely do those upstarts from the middle of nowhere actually make things happen. Yes, they get to the Final Four. Every once in a while, someone might even play their way all the way in to a national championship game, but they don't win the national championship.
And they hardly ever get to the Final Four. They win a game in the first weekend. Maybe they get to the Sweet 16 is most often the case.
Yes. Now, we love the Cinderella thing. Is Cinderella dead in college basketball, in the men's tournament?
Is it midnight?
Has the clock struck 12? Is Gus and Jacques now turning back into little mice? Did the chariot become a pumpkin again? Because in 2025, in this particular tournament, not only is there no Cinderella alive, there's no mid-major alive. There's no Gonzaga out there. It's only Power 4 teams that live and survive and advance in this particular NCAA tournament. Is that something that we're okay with moving forward? The model that has been created by the transfer portal, by the NIL machine of larger schools, means that mid-majors and former Cinderellas are now developmental programs for Kentucky, for Kansas, for whomever. And you had these cool moments in the first round, the McNeese State, Amir Arakan, right? The manager that was getting the NIL deals and things like that. We're going to find ways.
Did you see Topps, the trading card, made a card for him?
It's awesome. Good for him. Good for him. I came late to that party. I saw,
I was late to it too. I was trying to figure out why he was getting so much shine. He's just the reason why the nickname Aura.
Yeah.
Because he has so much swag, and apparently that's what the kids don't say swag anymore, OC. Apparently they say aura.
They say aura. All right. Did you see the former Florida State ball boy? Remember the Red Rocket? Remember the guy that would just sprint down the sidelines?
Yeah.
He came out there and he was like, I walked so these kids could run. Look, it's awesome. Like viral moments. That's great. Viral moments surrounding a team manager are, in the end, a little less compelling than viral moments around a buzzer beater or a VCU, a Florida Gulf Coast.
The cheerleaders
a Butler.
They're wearing. Sorry, I can't get off this Oracan guy. The cheerleaders were wearing socks with his face on it.
Yeah.
The McNeese cheerleaders.
I need to know. Okay, here's what I need to know about that. Did Amir Khan? Did he make socks with his face on them and give them to the cheerleaders?
Or was it some company who decided to do NIL for him, maybe?
Yeah. Did the cheer coach get just like a random box from I don't know, Stance, who makes great socks.
Yeah.
And just like, hey, this is an NIL thing, so I'll put these on.
Put these on. People are talking about it, so we're going to try to capitalize during the tournament.
Has Amir Khan actually spoken to any of those cheerleaders?
Yeah.
Is what I need to know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think the chances are low.
I don't know, though.
Maybe it's not.
He's a charismatic guy. So maybe
when they're around the team almost as much as he is, because they're at all the games, maybe he's been able to get to know the cheerleaders and vice versa.
If he was able to pull that off himself, like, hey, will you guys wear socks with my face on it?
And they're like, absolutely.
And they're like, yes. Then this dude needs to be the president of the United States. If it was like some corporate thing where, there were finances involved, and then it's a little bit less exciting and less impressive. But, you saw like Under Armour flew a rep in to wherever they were playing with a custom jumpsuit for him. And he got like $100,000 out of this.
That's right. And
he got a bunch of deals.
He got like I mentioned, he got a trading card from Topps.
It's an amazing weekend for a kid.
Did you see his the other thing that was getting a lot of run was his quote on McNeese's athletics website is if they kept team manager stats, mine would be like Wilt Chamberlain's.
Amazing.
It's so good.
It's so good. As fun as all of that is, it's not as much
still
fun.
Lost.
It's not as much fun as having McNeese in the tournament.
Yeah.
Still, right?
It's true.
Actually winning the basketball games. And
they got one, not still in.
It's not, we don't get a Cinderella team every year in the Sweet 16. We don't. We usually get multiple mid-majors at least surviving. There's at least like a San Diego State in here.
Yeah.
The conference.
Someone from the Mountain West, usually Gonzaga, obviously, which is almost graduated from a mid-major status, even though they play in a mid-major conference.
And for whatever reason, you don't have that this year. I shouldn't say for whatever reason. We know what the reason is. My question for all of you at Real OC Sports on our Twitter poll, is Cinderella dead? Have we, with our move towards professionalism in college sports, have we taken away one of the most magical things in college sports? Have we ruined our own love of the NCAA tournament where you're not going to get it anymore? Because the kids that would drive McNeese State to a Sweet 16 bid or would drive St. Peter's to a Sweet 16 bid or whatever.
St. Peter's run was fun.
Those kids now don't stay as soon as they are discovered in their conference tournament the year before or whatever, they're gone.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be careful about doing it's all ruined, because college football isn't ruined, okay? There were a lot of people that were wringing their hands 5 years ago when I'm doing Sirius XM radio and all this stuff is coming down and all these changes are being made. I took a lot of phone calls with people being like, this is going to wreck the games we love. This is going to ruin things. It's not ruined, okay? College sports are not ruined. They're just different. And in some ways, they're unrecognizable from what they were. And you can not be ruined but still be diminished. And that's my biggest fear with college football right now. College football is my favorite sport. I love it. I love everything about college football. I have since I started paying attention to it when I was like, you know how you would watch games with your grandparents or you'd watch games with your parents? My parents didn't watch games. So I would watch games with my parents or with my grandparents. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, and then I was probably like 9 years old when I decided I was watching games because I wanted to watch the games. Right?
Yeah.
And college football was the thing that I would turn on most frequently. And in my house, it was Notre Dame, and it was whatever, University of Colorado was on a lot at that time because we didn't have cable. And that's what I was watching. And I was like, sweet. And I would watch Knicks basketball, weirdly enough. But you decide at some point in your life what you're going to be a fan of and what really gets you. College football got me. I love the 49ers. I love the NFL. College football was the thing, first and foremost, that became my tentpole sports viewing interest. And it has been that way my whole life. And it is shakier now than it was. I'm not the person who's going to be like, I don't want to watch it anymore because these kids don't have any loyalty. And they don't care. They do. They just care.
They don't play for the love of the game anymore,
Well,
LC. I can't watch.
Guess what? If you have the opportunity to play for the love of the game or the love of the game and $400,000, you're going to choose the latter.
You're gonna be like, I'm gonna try to still love this game with 400 more K in my pocket.
I mean, and none of us are above this.
No.
It's really unfortunate the way that kids have been vilified, that the athletes have been vilified in this, because the adults in the room are the ones that failed. And I'm worried that the adults in the room failed enough that now March Madness, not ruined, but diminished.
I think it's way too early to say that the NIL and transfer portal, lack of regulation, new rules around those things have made it so there's no more Cinderellas or way less Cinderellas. I think this is the first year since NIL became a legalized thing in college athletics that we haven't had a mid-major team make a deep run. Setting aside
right.
Gonzaga, I think let's give it a couple more years, see how things play out. I don't disagree with your point that it seems that the direction we're moving in is that the best players from these potential Cinderella teams, from these mid-major teams, are transferring out of those mid-major programs to go to Duke, to go to Kentucky, to go to North Carolina, wherever, Kansas, instead of sticking it out. And that I don't disagree with the thought that could make it so we don't have Cinderellas anymore. But the thing about the Cinderella is that we've never been able to predict it. So I'm not sure that losing those programs losing out on their best players, guys who in the past would have stayed 3 or 4 years at those schools, going to the blue blood programs, going to the programs in major conferences, I'm not sure that we can say that we can predict that means that those teams still won't make a run to Sweet 16 or farther in the tournament. I think that the men's game in particular, there's so much talent that inevitably that talent is going to find itself in some of these programs, and the blue bloods are gonna be like, how'd we miss on this guy? And you're gonna have some somewhat deep runs from Cinderella teams in the tournament, I think, going forward, unless the only thing that stops this, OC, is if we have the super conference thing that we've been predicting for college football over the last 4 or 5 years. If we have that in college basketball and they completely shut the mid-major conferences out of the NCAA tournament, that's the only way I think we are guaranteed not to have Cinderellas.
So I'm trying to be fair about this and be like, okay, so where are the things that threaten the old way? We know that people just assume any influx of cash, any money being thrown at something, corrupts it, ruins it, whatever. I just decided, what about the all-tournament teams? How many times, because yes, of course, Cinderellas rely on, improbable wins, but what Cinderellas often rely on is like a player going nuts.
Yeah.
A player or two going nuts. What about the all-tournament teams? Have all-tournament teams recently been laden with non-Power 5 players? And, of course, the answer is no. But let me ask you this. Last year's all-tournament team was 4 UConn Huskies and Zach Edey. Okay? That has nothing to do with NIL ruining it. That's just like those guys were always going to be Power 5 players, right?
And they were UConn won back-to-back titles with those players, and Purdue was in the national championship game with Zach Edey. So, yeah. Was he a 2 or 3 time player of the year, too?
2023, though, 3 UConn Huskies. They also won the championship that year, of course.
Yeah.
Lamont Butler, San Diego State.
Yeah, got him to the championship game.
Elijah Martin, Florida Atlantic. So does NIL change and the transfer portal change where those guys are at now moving forward?
It's definitely possible.
Does Elijah Martin finish any amount of time? Does he play any amount of time at Florida Atlantic in the modern era when everyone's got it all figured out, right? The 2022 team, it was 2 Kansas Jayhawks, 2 North Carolina Tar Heels, and Paulo Banchero. So we're not talking about like Cinderella players either in a lot of these years. And of course, I'm only talking about 5 out of a sample size of hundreds and hundreds of tournament players. But at 2021, you had a couple of Gonzaga guys that were there. And Gonzaga is a weird one because they're,
that was the team that their only loss all year was in the national championship game. That was the team that was supposed to be the next undefeated team, the next 1981 Indiana Hoosiers. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for them.
And by the way, the transfer portal and NIL are not going to affect because of what Gonzaga is.
Yeah.
Gonzaga is – they're the enemy here, right? Gonzaga is like – they're the powerhouse here.
Yeah, they're a major program in a mid-major conference.
That's right. Gonzaga doesn't get the special treatment. Like having Jalen Suggs be an all-tournament team player, having Jalen Suggs be
that doesn't count for what we're talking about.
Jalen Suggs was a top basketball recruit and a top football recruit.
Yeah, he was so good at Gonzaga, and he's one of the best defensive players in the NBA when healthy right now.
Now, we could talk about Drew Timme and what Drew Timme is in a transfer portal and NIL era. Like, is Drew Timme spending a lot of time at a mom-and-pop shop? No. But he's also not these other guys. So, I don't know. It's something to look at. I'm not yet ready to tell you anything is ruined because that is lazy. That is reductive. That is a stupid way to approach change.
It's prisoner of the moment, too. Like, give it some time, and then let's evaluate it.
But it's also silly to not pretend that this effect is a very real one. Previously, at least 7 conferences were represented as the low in Sweet 16 play, and it's down to 4 this year.
Yeah, and that's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
I know that I just made the point that I'm not ready to say things are going to change. This means things have changed drastically, but about half as many conferences represented in the Sweet 16 than the previous all-time low is. That's not something to just completely dismiss either.
It's silly to pretend there's not a consolidation of power happening in every revenue-producing sport. And
absolutely,
if I'm at VCU or if I'm at McNeese State, I just have to be realistic about these things. And not just those. If I'm at San Diego State, who's traditionally, they've done some nice things, right? If I'm Gonzaga, I'm looking at things and going like, okay, this conference affiliation I have, and I'm going to join this new Pac-12,
which is going to be a step up from the West Coast Conference, but still a mid-major.
It's a mid-major. I'm going, okay, how sustainable is this? Can I still play by these rules? Can I still put myself in this situation? I didn't make the Sweet 16 this year.
Did you know it was it 9 straight years in the Sweet 16 by Gonzaga before losing?
It's crazy. It's just something that you have to look at. And now's the time to look at it, by the way, because if you start to like put a plan together and maybe react to it after we're in our 5th year of only power conference teams making it to the Sweet 16 or beyond, we're far, far, far too late. Yeah. There's no going back. And I think we can't unring the bell of NIL and transfer portal, but for especially teams like Gonzaga, teams like San Diego State, the upper crust of the mid-majors, the blue blood representatives of the blue-collar conferences, you've got to be like, okay, can I sustain this? Is 2025 going to be my outlier, didn't show up kind of year? Or is it going to be, hey, man, like I now lose all my best players, even from Gonzaga, even from San Diego State, even from wherever, to go play at a power conference school? Because the SEC might get 6 Elite 8 teams.
Yeah.
And And you cannot tell me that's unrelated to the embarrassment of riches that come from SEC football trickling down to their basketball programs. That's what's happening, at least for the SEC. And they're smart athletic directors. They're smart coaches. They are fan bases that are absolutely insane about supporting success, whatever that sport is, softball, gymnastics, men's basketball, women's basketball,
They're the best,
and, of course, football.
They've been the best baseball conference for a long time, too.
Absolutely.
And, so, yeah, you mentioned softball. Like, when they say it just means more, the fans it's make it so it's not just a slogan. Like, they actually do their part in showing, yeah, it means more to us than most places,
and
as much as we want to make fun of it.
And these are a lot of these campuses, again, are not in major cities.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of money that is being spent in Starkville and is being spent in Auburn. These are, I mean, Tuscaloosa is not exactly Atlanta. And yet, here we are. So, I don't have a resolution for any of this. I don't have a fix for any of it. My question is one that has to be thought about. And I'm not the only one asking it. Are we diminishing even the great institutions of our favorite sports by focusing only on the money associated with it? If you start to erode competitiveness in March Madness, that is a problem for the entire country, because everybody wants to fill out a bracket and everybody wants to attach some loyalty for one weekend to St. Peter's or Butler. Anyway, we're way over time. Sean O'Connell Show rolling on a Monday. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. 801-850-9100. That's how you get a hold of our friends at Advanced Window Products. Why would you want to get a hold of our friends at Advanced Window Products? Well, because you're about to enter a very interesting time of Utah weather for your house, for your windows especially, right? You're going to wake up in the morning. It's going to be 31 degrees outside. You're going to put a coat on. You're going to turn on the heater. You're going to go to work. You're going to come home. Your house is going to be sweltering. Your windows are going to have expanded because the sun's going to be beating on them all day long. You know what? That's not great on old windows. That's not great when you don't have energy efficiency in your home. And, of course, now you're completely all over the place with your energy costs. Unless, of course, you call our friends at Advanced Windows, and they hook you up with new windows. $2,500 off 10 windows or more, by the way. Locally manufactured, locally sold, all of the local installation, and, of course, your warranty, which is the life of the windows, the life of the home, that's done locally as well. They eliminate the middleman. They pass that savings on to you. And most importantly, it's a company that you can trust. They will get it done quickly. They will get it done right. And if there is any issue at all, you will call, and they will fix it. They will not give you this runaround about, well, hey, that's a manufacturer problem, or that's an installer problem, or no, that was a sales problem, because all of those are handled under one roof at Advanced Windows. AdvancedWindows.com or 801-850-9100. James, in every other area of my life, I really detest being wrong. I'm an ego-driven person. I like to be right. In this job, I enjoy when I'm wrong.
Oh.
Well, sometimes. In this case, I enjoy being wrong because I told you last week, Deion Sanders has an incredible idea for Colorado spring football.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, nobody's going to take him up on it.
Yeah, no one, it would never happen. Yeah, that's what we said.
Why would I say something? Why would I speak in absolutes? What an idiot. You should open the mic and been like, wait. I think Syracuse.
Never say never.
I think Syracuse might like this idea.
Not so fast, my friend.
Because that's what's happening. Colorado and Syracuse have started paperwork to hold joint spring football practices and potentially a joint spring scrimmage. This is amazing.
Glorious.
This is so fantastic. This is such a great idea. Say everything bad you want about Deion Sanders, but just say it to yourself. I don't want to hear it on this show, all right? He's willing to try different things. He does things a little bit differently than everybody else. He has some of the same bugaboos that people don't like about LeBron James. He has some of the same bugaboos that people here in Salt Lake City especially have a hard time understanding because you come from very different backgrounds and you don't know why everything is looked at through a certain lens. But Deion Sanders is a guy who has been a father figure to his own children and dozens and dozens and dozens of other players on his team, including Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, and projected number 2 overall pick, depending on which mock draft you're looking at right now. And now he might just be saving spring football in the country. I love this.
Love it. And we were just talking about college athletics being diminished. This is the kind of innovative idea that can help at least stave that off a little bit, or make the new college athletics product be even more interesting.
Here's the thing. We have an appetite for football in this country that is not wholly satisfied by the football we get in the fall.
Yeah.
Now, the UFL and all these alternative leagues have tried to find a way to, like, make money off of that appetite.
Keep our interest, yeah.
But they're not – we don't need them. They're not quite there. They're not good enough. They're not interesting enough. You know what is interesting enough? Just a little preview, just a little tidbit, just a little cupcake-sized serving of your favorite college football team in the spring. You don't need the whole season. You don't need another 5 games in the spring. You don't need 8 games. You don't need a full spring season. You need this. You need a little glimpse of what that team could be. Now, again, this is risky because there's still a transfer portal window open after spring football.
Risky for Syracuse in this case.
That's probably going to be closing sooner than later. And Deion is just willing and bold enough to know that, like, look, I'm not recruiting high school kids anyway. All I do is recruit the transfer portal. If some of my guys leave, fine, I'll go replace them. But he's a destination school.
Yeah.
He's like, people come here. They don't leave me to go elsewhere. They leave somewhere else to come here.
Yeah, he believes that there's no risk for Colorado to do something like this. Now, school like Syracuse, who's tentatively agreed to do it with Colorado, there's much more risk for the Orange.
Sure, there's a lot more risk for the Orange.
Credit to them for being willing to try it anyway, though.
By the way, absolutely. And by the way, the risk associated can be mitigated by putting real contracts in place. If you're paying these damn players anyway, then you just make them be contract employees.
Yeah.
Like, guys, guess what? You signed, we gave you $500,000, we gave you $100,000, we gave you $50,000, we gave you whatever that number is. You have to be here. You can't transfer. If you sign this and you take this car I'm giving you, or you take this fat deposit into your bank account that I'm giving you, you're forfeiting your right to put your name in the transfer portal.
At least I know that we don't want free agency for everyone after 1 year deals, but at least for a calendar year, you cannot take part in any of the transfer windows from January till December 31st. You can't do it.
That would be. It doesn't fix everything. It would help things, and it would
help the stability of things.
And it would make something like this more possible for other schools, including Utah, including BYU, including Utah State. And for Utah State, this would be a revenue opportunity that I think makes a lot of sense. For Utah and for BYU, it's probably more risky than it is rewardy. But for a team like Utah State, for a team like Weber State, this is where you can hopefully put a little extra money in the pockets of your coaches, your players, your whomever, your NIL fund. Syracuse would not be doing this if it wasn't going to make financial sense. Colorado and some network television partner is going to make this make financial sense. And it's going to make a heck of a lot more sense if we move the direction that a lot of coaches have told us we are going to move, where the second transfer portal window closes. And it's going to be the beginning of that winter semester, that January thing. That's the only time we have a transfer window. My previous idea, again, being wrong sometimes is the best thing. My previous idea of have the transfer portal window open after spring football, because then people really have a good sense of when they can actually, are they actually going to be part of the plans next year? That would preclude these games from happening for most teams. So, no one was listening to my idea anyway. Great. Put it in January, the January 1st to January 10th or whatever. And then if a guy lands at Colorado, he's playing against Syracuse in the spring game. If he lands at BYU, he's playing against Utah in a spring game. No, you're not going to do that. But if he's playing at BYU, you're playing against Utah State in a spring game. And the Aggies are getting $250,000 to come down there. And guess what? Their best players that do impress Kalani Sitake are going to have to wait at least until after the whole football season if they want to go to BYU after that. Because there's no transfer portal window. If that thing closes, this might become an actual common practice in college football, and that would be fantastic. And who would we have to thank for it, James?
Coach Prime.
Who would we have to go back, begrudgingly for some, but willingly and happily for me? We'd have to be like, that was Dion's idea, and look at how fun it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'd like to, is now we're on the conversation of transfer portal windows, the other thing I'd like to see is something similar to what's happening with the Runnin' Utes right now in college basketball. Guys like Jake Wallin officially being in the portal, but also suiting up for Utah in their postseason games, in their remaining postseason games. I'd like to see that with football and college basketball, because we saw, I think the basketball transfer portal window opens up tomorrow. OC, maybe it was today. It's certainly this week. But we saw last year we had teams that were still alive in the tournament losing guys on their roster because they entered the transfer portal. I'd like to see if we're going to do a January football transfer portal window, the playoffs still going in January. I'd like to see programs saying, hey, we'll still use you for the rest of this playoff run, but because you're still technically on the roster, you haven't gotten a new team yet. We'll still use you. We'll still keep you on our roster. I'd like to see that sort of thing play out in both college basketball and college football. Right now, there's too much of, oh, you're in the portal, you're dead to me stuff. And it's like, well, we're still playing for a potential national championship here. I feel like I could probably help you. Will you let me stay on the team, please? Even if doesn't look like I'm going to be here next year. I'd like to see more of that.
Utah spring football has begun. ESPN 792.1 FM has all the coverage you need. Our coverage brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Head to ESPN700sports.com for more details. We'll wrap up the show next. Give away some tickets to LOVB volleyball. Salt Lake versus Madison coming up April 5th at Bruins Arena at Salt Lake Community College. A couple tickets to give away in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Crosstalk coming, brought to you by friends at Burt Brothers. Spring into savings, get your car ready for the season. $69 tires, $50 off service tickets, $79 alignments with the purchase of 2 or more tires. Do not wait. Deals don't last. Stop by your nearest Burt Brothers today. Burt Brothers does it better. First, though, some trivia for you. 877-353-0700 for a couple of volleyball tickets as LOVB Volleyball. Salt Lake versus Madison. April 5th at the Bruin Arena on the campus of Salt Lake Community College. How many conferences in the men's tournament are represented in the Sweet 16? 877-353-0700. We were lamenting this earlier. It is a record low. Never before in basketball history has this few conference number been represented. 877-353-0700. For your 2 tickets. Spence Checketts and The Drive are coming up next. Hey, Spence.
Hello, Sean. You know, Ken Pomeroy on the show a couple weeks ago gave some advice that I should have followed because my bracket is screwed. The upsets I picked didn't work. He said, this is kind of a historic gap between the best teams in college basketball and everybody else. And that's kind of what's manifested. It's been a little chalky. How's your bracket, by the way? You hanging in there?
We're doing okay.
Right.
Scott Mitchell's dominating us right now.
Yeah, he obviously copied Ken Palm's bracket. Scott doesn't know his elbow from his rear about college basketball. And that's just my 8-year-old niece is leading our family bracket right now. Kayvon, actually, our former president, texted in wondering if I wanted him on the show to talk brackets today because he's doing well. So, yeah, it's been a little chalky. I love it, though. I'm not sure how much you've consumed. On Sunday, I made a point to be in front of the TV for Duke Baylor because that's Cooper, VJ Edgecombe to see these prospects play. And, BYU for the 3rd time in school history in the Sweet 16. So I love the tournament. It's my favorite thing that we do all year round on a normal cycle when there's not like an Olympics or the Jazz are in the finals or Utah's in the Rose Bowl or whatever. The NCAA tournament on the basketball side is like my favorite thing, man. So it's been fun.
Does it diminish the product for you if Cinderella is dead moving forward in college basketball?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit it does. Now, Cinderella, more often than not, like the first Final Four I ever went to was 2006. And that was the first Billy Donovan Florida National Championship with Al Horford and Joakim Noah and Corey Brewer and those guys. And George Mason had made a run to the Final Four. Now, they got smoked in the Final Four. But that's pretty rare. Cinderellas typically start to dissipate at this point in the tournament, but you want a few options in the Sweet 16 and maybe even a couple that, go to the Elite Eight. But typically, Elite Eight, Final Four, National Championship, Cinderella does die. But yes, actually, I do think it does diminish the tournament a little bit when you don't have as many upsets. We have one buzzer beater. It was Maryland, Colorado State. I actually picked Colorado State to win that game. But that's wild to think about because the buzzer beaters are the moments you remember, and we have one in the entire tournament so far. So I would say, yes, it does diminish it a little bit.
You know what's actually really strange to think about is that we had more of a Cinderella story in college football this season than in college basketball. In an expanded college football playoff where Arizona State and Boise State got first-round buys, and then Arizona State went to double overtime with Texas to advance. I mean, that was a better Cinderella story than anything we got in the men's basketball tournament, and it's supposed to be easier to produce a Cinderella in men's basketball, but somehow football gave us more of a Cinderella story.
That's a good point, and I'll tell you what, you can make an argument that there aren't any Cinderellas left. Like, Arkansas has 4 pros. They were just hurt all year long. They could not get healthy. And John Calipari, Arkansas, when they finally got healthy at the end of the season, like when I started watching that Arkansas, because I picked St. John's to go to the Final Four, so obviously that's screwed. But when I started watching the Arkansas-St. John's game and realized that Cal had all of his players, I'm like, this is not a 10 seed. Like, they truly have 4 NBA prospects. There are no Cinderella stories left. Arkansas is not one. You can save that. That's not a Cinderella team.
Well, that's why we kind of asked the question, is Cinderella dead in college basketball? And James and I settled on let's reserve judgment see if a couple more years, if a mid-major team makes a run or a couple make a team, if there's a player still at VCU some year that is the guy that emerges in the tournament or whatever. But right now you've got 4 conferences represented in the Sweet 16.
It's only 4. Jeez.
They're all Power 4 teams.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
The previous low was 7 different conferences represented.
That's wild.
And, you have to at least look at, especially with what's going on with SEC basketball right now and the trickle-down economics of that, there could be 6 SEC teams in the Elite 8.
And, what's happening now that the transfer portal has allowed and NIL has allowed, like a lot of these big-time programs back in the day, a lot of their better players would have been one-and-dones. But now, like, Caleb Love has been in college basketball for years. Arizona's elite guard, he was with Carolina for a long, long time. So you have players that have been playing college basketball for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Even if they're not with the team now that they started with, they're still 4, 5, 6 year veteran players in college basketball. So the old Cinderella runs used to be, okay, so a team like George Mason had their top 8 players in the program for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yes.
And they run up a team like Duke or Carolina or a blue blood that has 3 one-and-done prospects. So you have 23-year-olds beating up on 18-year-olds, and then you get a Cinderella.
23-year-olds that have been playing together for 4 years.
Exactly. Yeah. And now what you have are 22, 23, 24-year-olds that have been playing college basketball for 5 or 6 years, playing for Arizona, playing for some of the blue bloods, and that's what's new. And look, it's always been, whether it's college football or college basketball, the haves versus the have-nots. That's not a new thing, but I think the gap in college hoops, at least for this year, has shown that it's widening a little bit, and that's too bad.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts.
Hold on. I got one more thing for you.
Oh, well.
No, one more thing for you, because you're the guy for this.
All right,
okay?
Okay.
So BYU fans feeling themselves, right? Jerem Jordan's your homie.
Yeah.
Okay? So just a little peek behind the curtain when I'm doing my prep for a couple hours before the show, tune into my guy, Sean, and then I'm watching the local stuff and throw on BYU Sports Nation to see how my goobs are doing today.
Yeah.
Your boy, okay, gold chain out, quoting TLC. You got to come get your boy. BYU fans feeling themselves. Gold chain, Jerem Jordan quoting TLC on BYU Sports Nation. So do me a favor and come get your boy.
I'm not going to.
You're not?
No, I'm not going to, because let me be careful how I say this.
No, don't be careful. I'm not going to be careful
There's an
today.
entire piece of very important literature to both people at BYU that is all about the pride cycle.
Oh. Pride cometh before the fall.
You gotta let these things happen.
Okay. I got you.
And you know what? I'm high on this BYU team
They're
right
really
now.
good.
But Alabama's a nightmare.
Yes, they
and
are.
Duke is an even bigger nightmare.
Yes, they are.
And what we have seen so far is an example of success and good decision-making and good coaching and recognition of talent in Richie Saunders that nobody else really recognizes. It's awesome. It's a good story right
They're
now
really
in
good.
college basketball.
Yeah.
I don't know how much longer it's going to last. And we've had to eat this humble pie as Utah football fans these last couple of seasons.
And basketball fans.
For 9 years,
Mhm.
right? And BYU is right now a little over its skis with the expectation, and that's fine.
Mm.
And I want them to have fun with it right now because that's what college basketball and college sports are.
Okay.
You just ride this wave and the high and the joy, and then unfortunately you lose that Rose Bowl to Ohio State when you think it's in the bag. And you just, you let the heart get torn out. It's not my job.
Okay.
Nor is it your job.
Well,
to bring these people back down to earth.
Then my lesson is don't turn on the TV because it ruined my day. Like, I don't need to see Jerem Jordan wearing a gold chain untucked. Like, tuck it in, man.
No.
Tuck in the chain.
No,
and don't quote TLC. Don't take it out. Don't take out the gold chain and don't quote TLC. And he joins your show, not mine. But if you're not going to go get him, I guess we'll just enjoy the ride.
I'm not going to. In fact, he'll join us on the show, and I'm going to put him on the camera, and I'm going to demand that he wears the chain all the way out.
Well, then I'm not watching because it ruined my day.
You may or may not hear what Spence just said as part of the intro to Jerem Jordan tomorrow. How's that?
Perfect.
Please do. Someone needs to bring it up.
It's some intrigue.
All right.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening today. That's it for the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.